Chapter 17:11. Gong Huanyan's face turned green. She had already betrayed the Devil Clan in front of the Devil Master and chose the Supreme Divinity. If the Supreme Divinity always protected her, everything would be fine. She didn't need to be afraid that the Devil Master would kill her. But if the Supreme Divinity didn't care about her anymore, how could she survive after she went out? She looked at Xinjiuli with tears in her eyes. Supreme Divinity? Xinjiuli had already turned around and ignored her. Gong Huanyan had no choice but to kneel in front of the Devil Master. I know I was wrong. Please spare my life. Imo looked down at her coldly. Although this protector looked a little timid, she was quite obedient in front of her. Even if she was a little clumsy and not good with words, she looked very loyal. At that time, Imo didn't pay much attention to these subordinates, so she didn't really see through their characters. Imo originally thought that even if Gong Huanyan had countless problems, she was still loyal. What Imo did just now was purely to discipline her subordinates. How could a protector of the Devil Palace tremble like a little chick? Wasn't it shameful? If there was such a coward in her agent team in her previous life, she would probably grab her collar and scold her. She might even kick her out. But for those subordinates, even if she scolded them, they wouldn't turn around and join the other side. This was a matter of principle. She thought that she treated Gong Huanyan well in the Mo Palace, but she didn't expect her to be so unprincipled. What was the difference between her and a traitor? She was still wrong. Imo said that she couldn't stay in the Mo Palace as a protector because of Gong Huanyan's character. Such a little white rabbit wasn't suitable to be a protector at all. So it was better to put her in other places in the devil world. She didn't want to kill her or do anything to Gong Huanyan. Now that she knew the nature of this, which she only felt it was funny. She let Gong Huanyan count out 30 to 40 times before she said lightly, Gong Huanyan, from now on, I'm no longer your devil master, and there's no such person as you in the devil world anymore. You're free. You can go anywhere you want. She glanced at Xinjiuli, who was in front of her. Her voice was still indifferent as she said, Divine Lord, you can continue to protect her from now on. I won't say anything else. Xinjiuli's back stiffened slightly, and Gong Huanyan was also stunned for a moment. Then, as if she had been saved from death's door, she immediately got up and stuck close to him. Divine Lord. She looked delicate and weak as if she was begging for mercy. Xinjiuli's lips twitched. She couldn't help but glance sideways at Imo, but Imo didn't look at them anymore. At this time there were 6 of them. Xinjiuli was in one group, Imo was in another, and Sky Sovereign was in another. Sky Emperor's partner was also a protector of the devil race. She had a fiery temper. In terms of real kung fu, she was stronger than Gong Huanyan, but there was a limit. After entering this place, she was a little nervous because of the terrifying aura, but she did not want to lose her composure. She had been working hard to overcome her fear and keep up with everyone's footsteps. She cooperated well with Sky Sovereign and was a trustworthy partner. Gong Huanyan's cowardly look not only made Imo feel uncomfortable, but also made her feel uncomfortable. She felt that her face was burning. On the battlefield of blood and fire, what was important was the courage to fight. Chapter 17:12. On the battlefield of blood and fire, what was needed was the spirit of daring to fight, not trembling in fear and needing protection at all times. Especially when the trembling person was from her camp. Shameful. Not just a little shameful. This Gong Huanyan was a guardian like her, and she often told her that the Devil Lord was a good master, as if she would die for the Devil Lord without blinking an eye. She didn't expect her to be like this at the critical moment. The fiery guardian looked at Gong Huanyan with disdain. She despised her character and said coldly, Gong Huanyan, congratulations on finding a new master. Our friendship ends here. Gong Huanyan looked from one to the other. Then she leaned closer to Xinjiuli and said, Divine Lord, I have been expelled from the devil world. I have nothing to do with the devil world anymore. Please take me in. Her delicate body almost leaned on Xinjiuli. Xinjiuli stepped back quietly and said lightly, I will arrange a place for you. Now you just need to focus on cooperating with me. Yes. Gong Huanyan was finally relieved. She wanted to take the opportunity to fight for a good opportunity for herself. Divine Lord, after the things here are over, Huanyan is willing to enter the Fantian Palace as a servant. As long as I can be taught by Divine Lord, Huanyan is willing to do anything. She expressed her loyalty to Xinjiuli again. Her eyes were watery and her voice was soft. When she made such an expression, she didn't know how many men she had subdued to work for her. The other female guardian of the Devil Palace felt a chill and couldn't help but curse. She didn't want to look at her anymore. She felt that she had degraded herself by associating with such a person. She was a fiery and straightforward person. If it wasn't such a moment, she would beat her up without saying anything. Now she just urged in a rough voice, "If you want to show your loyalty, go out and show it. Don't discuss people here. Are you going or not?" Xinjuli turned around and left. Gong Huanyin hurriedly followed him like a dogskin plaster. Amo was still walking at the back. Ever since she said that she would banish Gong Huanyin from the devil realm, she had completely calmed down. Now, even if Gong Huanyin were to lie on top of Xinjuli, she would not frown or even blink her eyelashes. Her memory had indeed come back. She didn't expect that this extremely evil Zisha could actually break her devil's seal and restore her memory. Not long after she entered the purple evil spirit, the memories in her mind began to pop out. There was a small amount of joy in those memories, but most of it was pain worse than death. Memories rolled like the sea, hitting her until she was dizzy and disoriented. Her hands and feet were cold, and she was unable to come back to her senses for a while. She finally understood why she had used a third of her cultivation to create that seal after she was reborn on this continent. It turned out that those memories were really too painful. It was a bone-piercing pain. She, a devil master, had actually lived such a cowardly life after transforming into a human. Old memories came flooding back, and the pain of being reborn felt like it was just yesterday. It turned out that she had such a deep entanglement with that divine master. It turned out that she had once risked her life to love someone. She knew that she had always wanted to be strong. As long as she was alive, she wanted to live a wonderful life and live herself. No matter what difficulties she encountered, she would fight for a way out. But one day she was tortured by this relationship and wanted to die. She was so cowardly that she could only take revenge on him by dying in his hands. Chapter 17:13. She loved him so much that she went crazy. After being raped by him, she waited for him for 10 days just to get an explanation. But what did she get in return? What awaited him was another assassination attempt from Wu Mo. It was a battle of life and death. She couldn't go easy on him, so she killed Wu Mo. However, she angered him when he just returned. He didn't listen to her explanation and locked her up in the ice purgatory without saying a word. In the ice purgatory, she was so cold that she wished she was dead, but he never came to see her. Even if it was just a glance, it would be good. She had waited so long for him to come, but he was here to execute her. He didn't care about her fear and threw her into the medicinal soup. He boiled her alive for a few hours and let her taste the feeling of being in a pot of oil again and again. She still trembled when she thought about the despair and horror of being in a pot of oil. If Shuilan didn't come to save her, perhaps she would have disappeared. She was disheartened in the demon realm. However, he spread the news that he expelled her from his sect and no longer recognized her. He completely cut off all ties with her. At that time she hated herself. She hated herself for not being able to let go. He had already treated her so badly, but she still couldn't let go of him. Every day when she closed her eyes, she was still him. Some feelings couldn't be completely let go of just by thinking rationally. Every day her emotions and rationality were in a tug of war. She was exhausted and almost went crazy. She tried her best to walk out and forget him. That was why she wanted to try again with her previous lover, Shuilan. She wanted to see if she could find the feeling again. If she could find the feeling, she would be redeemed and wouldn't have to think about that person anymore. At that time, she really wanted to try again with Shuilan. She thought that since she could fall in love with him in her previous life, there was no reason why she couldn't fall in love with him in this life. She didn't expect herself to be so stubborn that she would be dead set on loving someone. She also didn't expect that the memories Shuilan gave her were fake. It turned out that he was also lying to her. In the banished land, she got the real memories of her previous life. Only then did she understand who she loved in her previous life. She also understood that Xinjuli really loved her in her previous life. In her previous life, even though she had done countless things to revive him, she was still the one who had wronged him first. Therefore, she didn't want to continue like this. She wanted to go back and explain to him. At the same time, she also wanted to hear his explanation. She wanted to know why he treated her like that. Subconsciously, she wanted to get back together with him. She wanted to be with him again. Who would have thought that he would get lost in space and return to his former country? She had risked her life to come back, only to receive news that he was going to be engaged to Luzine. He treated Luzine so well that the entire Tianci continent was talking about it. She didn't believe it and personally went over to take a look. In his bedroom, she saw a small side chamber prepared for Luzine. She did not give up and personally went to the engagement ceremony. She wanted to hear it from him personally. She wanted to know if he had really had a change of heart and if he had truly fallen in love with Luzine. If he really had a change of heart and fell in love with Luzine, she had her pride too. She would let go of him even if she was pregnant with his child. In the end, all she got from him was, "It has nothing to do with you." He watched as she was humiliated by Luzine without doing anything. He watched as she left and didn't ask her to stay. Then she saw him block the lightning tribulation for Luzine at the foot of the mountain. She saw Luzine snuggling under his protection like a little bird. At that moment her mind was blank. She finally understood that she had completely lost this love and could never get it back. Chapter 17:14. At that time she did not hate Shinjuli. She only hated the god of creation for playing tricks on her. She hated herself for being unlucky. Therefore she only wanted to take the child away. The child in her womb was her only support. She did not expect that God would take away her last support. Luzine killed her child and almost made her lose her mind completely. However, the moment he arrived, he indiscriminately sent her flying. Then he carried Luzine and left, leaving her bleeding profusely to fend for herself. At that moment, she only felt that her life was a joke. That kind of pain that was worse than death made her want to die. At that time she had never lived such a cowardly life. Someone else killed her baby, and she did not even have the ability to kill the person to avenge the child. That person was under the protection of Shinjuli, and she was Shinjuli's fiancée. For the first time in her life she hated Shinjuli to the bone. She did not know why Shinjuli healed her. Perhaps he still had feelings for her. Or perhaps he pitied her when he found out that she had lost the child. None of these were important to her at that time. What was important was that she wanted to avenge the child. She wanted to take revenge on Shinjuli. Now that she thought about it, her revenge was useless. She used her own death to take revenge on him. She still remembered the moment before the catastrophe. She was so desperate that she could not breathe. She only wanted to be free. She did not expect that she would come back to life, and she did not expect that she would be the Devil Master. As Ning Xuema, her life was too painful and useless. Therefore she did not hesitate to use 1/3 of her magic to completely erase the part about Ning Xuema. She was in a daze in front of a stone in the purple evil array for a long time. Her face was pale as she tried to organize these memories, trying to straighten them out one by one. She did not expect that Shinjuli could still find her here and bring the child to pester her. Since the memory of Ning Xuema was restored, she naturally began to doubt the identity of little Nianma. She knew that Shinjuli was a god. There was nothing he couldn't do. Perhaps he finally found out that the child was his after her death. He finally found out that Luzine was the one who harmed their child. Out of guilt, he gathered the child's soul and used divine spells to revive him. He even kept him in the Nuwa rock. He desperately wanted to reconcile with her. He did not hesitate to lower himself in her palace and listen to everything she said. Firstly, he felt guilty towards Ning Xuema. Secondly, he wanted to find his real mother for Nianma. The moment she regained her memories, countless thoughts and emotions came one after another, causing her mind to be in a mess. She almost couldn't walk out of the purple fiend array. When she was observing the purple fiend formation, she could faintly sense how powerful the purple fiend was. She was afraid that it would be a catastrophe for the 6 realms. She knew that this was not the time to think about personal feelings, nor was it the time to find out who was right and who was wrong in the past. Therefore, she forced herself to suppress her chaotic emotions and finally broke out of the purple evil array. Before she could find her footing, she heard the conversation between him and Shin Yanma. As expected, he did it for the sake of the child. After going through so much, she could no longer trust Shinjuli's feelings. She did not want to think about her feelings for him now. After she regained her memories, although she did not show anything on the surface, her heart was like boiling oil. This kind of emotion was inseparable and confusing, so she simply stopped thinking about it. Chapter 17:15. When a relationship couldn't be sorted out, it was better to put it aside for the time being and think about it carefully after completely calming down. What's more, the most important thing now was to reseal the purple demon. Everything else should make way for this matter. When she broke into the purple demon formation alone, because of the recovery of her memory, she was distracted for a moment and was attacked by the evil beasts inside. Her back was injured. If she wasn't a devil lord with powerful skills and a natural resistance to evil aura, she was afraid that she would really die inside and never be able to come out again. She had already treated the injury herself and used magic to cover it up. That was why she could act as if nothing had happened. However, she still underestimated the power of the evil beasts in the purple demon formation. After she came out, she felt a piercing pain in her back and her legs were a little weak. In addition, she had just recovered her memory and her mind was uneasy. Then, she heard the conversation between the father and son. All of these made her hands and feet feel cold. She really wanted to find a place to lean on. Fortunately, Shui Lan came in time. When she followed Shui Lan down, first she wanted to rest and recover her strength. Second, she also silently used her mental power to heal herself and make her pain less painful. If she had a good rest and recuperated for 2 or 3 days, she might be able to completely recover. But she didn't have the time. After she followed everyone into this formation, she experienced one battle after another. She had a tough personality and didn't want to drag the team down. Although she didn't show anything on the surface, the injury on her back made it harder and harder for her to ignore. She had been quietly using the magic power in her body to expel the poison while walking, but the effect was not great. She felt as if there were countless small knives digging into her wound, making her heart burn with anxiety. There were faint signs of pain in the pit of her stomach, like the precursor of a chronic disease that was about to break out. She tried her best to suppress it. According to her previous experience, after this kind of precursor, the real outbreak would take place 1 day later. As long as they moved a little faster, it wouldn't be too late for her to go back into seclusion after they finished sealing this place. Everyone had started to move forward again. Even if this group of people had different thoughts for the same purpose, they had to stick together and persevere. Along the way, Amo didn't say a word, as if he was mute. Gong Huanyin, on the other hand, was in a good mood because she finally had the protection of the Divine Venerable. She would talk to Xinjiuli from time to time, which finally made Xinjiuli impatient. "I don't like talkative people." His words finally shut Gong Huanyin up. She didn't dare to say anything more. Everyone's ears became much quieter. There were even more ambushes along the way, but they were all dealt with by the few of them. Except for Xinjiuli's team, the other 2 teams had a tacit understanding with each other. Finally, they arrived at the 7th sealing point, and the Celestial Thearchas group stayed behind. Watching the 4 people walk into the depths of the purple smoke again, the Witch Protector frowned slightly. Because she keenly noticed that their Devil Lord's walking posture was slightly strange, and his body seemed to be a little stiff. "Gong Yuing, I didn't expect you to be able to cooperate with me so well," Sky Emperor said beside her. The protector's name was Gong Yuing. She said faintly, "Your Majesty cooperated well too." Sky Emperor admired her a little. Normally, witches would be a little nervous and scared when they saw him, but this Gong Yuing didn't seem to have any psychological pressure when she was his partner. She was good at advancing and retreating, and her movements were fast and nimble. She didn't need him to take care of her at all. What was even rarer was that she had a fiery temper, which was comparable to her master. Chapter 17-16. This kind of girl was very attractive. Although there were many women around the Sky Emperor, none of them were like her. Especially when she cooperated with him in a fight, their cooperation was flawless and they could exert twice the power. If he could pull her to his side, "Yuang, I admire you very much. You don't have much of a future in Mo Palace as a protector. After all, you're just a servant. Why don't you come back to the heavenly court with me after this matter is over? I can make you concubine, Yuang." The Sky Emperor thought that the other party would be happy with his generous offer. Even if she didn't agree immediately, it was still a girl's shyness and modesty. That Gong Huanyin didn't hesitate to be a servant in order to stay by the Supreme Divinity's side. As the Supreme Divinity of the Celestial World, making her his concubine was already like a pie falling from the sky, right? Once she agreed, it would be like reaching the heavens in a single step. Moreover, he was so handsome. Even if he couldn't be compared to Xinjiuli, he was still a top figure. There were countless female deities in the heavens who wanted to marry him as his concubine. Therefore, the Sky Emperor was 100% sure that she would agree. Unexpectedly, just as he finished speaking, Gong Yuang interrupted him rudely. "Your Majesty, narcissism is a kind of illness. It needs to be treated." The Sky Emperor, Xinjiuli and the other 3 continued to move forward. "The road ahead is the most difficult. Everyone should be careful." Xinjiuli, who was walking at the front, said, "Yes, Supreme Divinity." Gong Huanyin was the first to agree. "Understood, we will be careful." Yi Tianli also replied in a low voice. Amo didn't say anything. She didn't speak again along the way. Xinjiuli intentionally or unintentionally brought up a few topics. The others responded enthusiastically, but she didn't respond at all. It was the same this time. Xinjiuli paused for a moment and gave up. He couldn't help but look at her once. He saw that her expression was calm and unperturbed. In addition, the light was dim so he couldn't see her face clearly. Fortunately, every time she was attacked, her moves were clean and efficient. She also cooperated with Yi Tianli better. Suddenly, a cliff appeared in front of him. This cliff was extremely narrow and long, only half a foot wide, but it was at least several thousand meters long. Through the purple smoke, he could only see that it was like a snake with only its back exposed, wriggling into the distance, with no end in sight. There were bottomless cliffs on both sides, and there was a faint red light flashing at the bottom of the cliffs. Below is the red lotus karmic fire that can burn everything. When you reach the top of the cliff, you will be attacked by the nether eagle. The nether eagle is born in the red lotus karmic fire. Its special characteristic is that it can attack with water spells. Once we pass this cliff, we will reach the 8th seal. Shinjuli quickly explained what they needed to pay attention to. Gong Huanyan's pretty face turned pale. She agreed quickly, but in her heart she was planning to stick close to the Divine Lord. The Divine Lord would protect her if she was in danger. Yi Tianli, you'll bring up the rear this time, Shinjuli spoke again. At this point, everyone was used to following his orders, so Yi Tianli did not ask why. On the contrary, he was relieved. No matter what, he was still a man. He felt bad letting a woman bring up the rear, even if the woman was the Devil Lord. He went to the back of Imo. However, Imo's body stiffened slightly. When she was at the back, no one would notice the injury on her back, so she could cast spells on her back less frequently. Now her clothes on her back might be stained with some blood. Chapter 17:17. Imo, is your back injured? Why are there bloodstains? Yi Tianli was very attentive and soon found something wrong with her back. At this moment they had already walked up the cliff. The cliff was blood red and sticky as if it was soaked in blood. The air was filled with the smell of blood. Shinjuli, who was walking in front, paused for a moment. Gong Huanyan suddenly said softly, "The Devil Master. The Devil Master will not be injured. The blood on her body is probably from the monster's blood." Yi Tianli thought about it and agreed. They had killed a lot of monsters just now, and Imo was the main force in killing the monsters. It was not strange that she would be stained with blood. However, he remembered that Imo always loved cleanliness. She could not tolerate any stains on her body. She was also the demon master. Even if she killed monsters, she would not be stained with dust. Imo? Yi Tianli was still worried. "I'm fine." Imo finally opened her golden mouth. Her voice was light and no one could hear anything. Yi Tianli still wanted to say something. Suddenly, a red light flashed in the rolling purple fog and flew towards the four of them. Dark Eagle. The most evil type of eagle in the demon god continent. It was said that it was an evil spirit that could not be freed from the river of forgetfulness in the underworld. It had 8 heads and 16 claws. It also had 8 pairs of wings. When it flew, it looked like a spinning windmill. Its 8 pairs of eyes were all blood red. It looked strange and made people shudder. The biggest characteristic of this type of eagle was that it had 8 lives. If you want to kill it, you have to cut off its 8 heads. Its mouth and claws, which were as sharp as a machete, were blood red in color. Every time it attacked, it looked like a flying guillotine. Its whole body was highly poisonous. Even if it touched a feather, it could be poisoned. What was even more troublesome was that it could hide. It flew silently. When it was discovered, it had already attacked. Encountering one of these things was enough to give people a headache. Yi Tianli had encountered one of these things when he was adventuring elsewhere. It took him a lot of effort to kill it. He was so tired that he almost got injured. At that time he was still in his prime. Now he was still half crippled. What's more, this time he encountered a group of them. There were a total of 180 of them. They were attacking them from 8 different directions. Yi Tianli did not have the time to ask about Imo's injury. He focused on fighting the enemy with Imo back to back. Yi Tianli did not truly understand Imo's kung fu until he met a strong opponent. It was only at this moment that he realized how powerful the Devil Lord's kung fu was. The sword flashed out like lightning, and the crimson light flickered like a tide, rolling between heaven and earth. Wherever the sword light passed, the attacking dark eagles were all twisted into her crimson light. In just a few moments, 8 heads of a dark eagle had fallen. Yi Tianli's mission was to protect her from the back. Once she was done with the front, she would switch places with him to deal with the back. It was as if the air was being torn apart and filled with the miserable cries of the dark eagles. When the dark eagles were killed, their bodies would explode, and their poisonous blood sprinkled down like purple rain. That blood was extremely poisonous and could corrode everything. Because he had to fight with the other nether eagles and couldn't set up a defensive barrier, The only way to resist this purple blood was to use sword light to protect his entire body. Because Imo was the one who killed most of the dark eagles that attacked his team, the purple blood rain basically flew towards her. Chapter 17-18. Because the dark eagles that attacked his team were basically killed by Imo, the purple blood rain basically flew towards her. With her blocking most of the purple rain attack, Yi Qianli only needed to protect the rear. Yi Qianli also glanced at Xinjiuli's team in the midst of his busy work, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. That team of Gong Huanyan was just an extra, a free gift. She could not resist anything at all and could only shrink beside Xinjiuli. Xinjiuli took care of 2 directions by himself, and also had to guard against his delicate companion falling down. It seemed that he was having a hard time. Gong Huanyan's body was covered by Xinjiuli's enchantment. She only needed to stay by his side obediently and not let the dark eagles break the enchantment. The only thing that gave her a headache was the eyes of those dark eagles. As long as she met those eyes, she would feel extremely terrified. Her legs trembled violently, and there were several times when she almost slipped down half a foot wide. When she saw the dark hawk attack, she couldn't help but scream. That scream was too shrill, causing Yi Qianli to tremble in fear. Later, she did not know if she controlled herself or was controlled by someone else, but she did not scream again. Only her eyes were wide open. There were several times when she wanted to grab Xinjiuli's robe to seek protection. But she did not know what was going on. She could not touch the person who was clearly beside her. This time, dealing with the dark eagle's attack mainly relied on Xinjiuli and Imo. The white and red light crisscrossed between heaven and earth, looking beautiful and cruel. Due to the frequent changes in their positions, Xinjiuli and Imo would occasionally bump into each other. Sometimes Xinjiuli's hand would even touch hers. Since entering this large array, the 2 of them were in the front and the back. Although they were in the same team, the distance between them had always been very far. It was only at this moment that they occasionally got so close, and even touched skin occasionally. Every time they touched each other, Imo would retract his hand without batting an eyelid. They did not even feel the temperature of each other's skin and had already separated at lightning speed. Sometimes Xinjiuli would take care of the nether eagles that were attacking Imo. When the nether eagles exploded and their purple blood splattered down, his sword light would flash and protect Imo. However, Imo didn't seem to like owing him a favor. If he helped her kill a dark eagle, she would also help him kill one. If he protected her once, she would also protect him once. No matter how strenuous it was, she would still do it. Obviously, she didn't want to owe him any more favors. Occasionally, their gazes would meet, and Imo would quietly look away. Occasionally, she could feel his gaze on her face. She could not see his gaze clearly, or perhaps she did not want to see it clearly, but her keen sixth sense made it impossible for her to ignore his gaze. She vaguely felt as if he was suppressing something in his gaze, or was it just her imagination? At this moment of life and death, she didn't want to think too much. She forcefully suppressed all her chaotic emotions into the depths of her heart. She only wanted to kill Dark Eagle. There were too many indescribable emotions in her heart, and she also wanted to find a channel to vent them. Killing the Dark Eagle became a channel for her to vent. After recovering Ning Xuema's memories, her eyes would turn black from time to time, but at this moment, they were completely red, as transparent as the setting sun, and the devil aura on her body was fully released. Among the 4 of them, Gong Huanyan was the most relaxed, so she had the most free time. Occasionally she would turn to Amo's direction. Chapter 17-19. Gong Huanyan trembled when she saw her eyes, her agile and bloodthirsty skills, as well as the strong pressure of the Devil Lord. She couldn't help but want to kneel down. Whenever she was nervous, she would slip and almost fell off the narrow cliff several times. If it weren't for Xinjiuli pulling her back in time, she would have already fallen to the Red Lotus Hellfire. Xinjiuli would be slightly distracted if he wanted to save her. After all, they were on the same boat now. No matter how useless this former subordinate was, Imo couldn't let her become a burden frequently. So when she changed positions, she tried to choose the right time to avoid facing Gong Huanyan. Even if she had no choice, she would try to retract the Devil Lord's coercion, lest Gong Huanyan's legs go soft. Once the Devil Lord's coercion was fully released, it had a great deterrent effect on those Netherworld eagles. It would also slow down their attacks slightly, making it easier for Imo to attack. When she retracted the Devil Lord's coercion in consideration of Gong Huanyan's emotions, those Netherworld eagles would suddenly speed up, and it would be more difficult for her to deal with them. Shinjuli obviously also discovered this very quickly, so when Imo turned around he would also try to change positions with Gong Huanyin to reduce the pressure on Imo. In this way the two had more opportunities to face each other. Although neither of them said anything after fighting for a while, they had a tacit understanding with each other. Red and white light intertwined and danced, like a dual-colored flower blooming in the dark night. Gong Huanyin was not just ashamed. At such a critical moment, her incompetence was simply like a joke. Not only could she not help at all, but she also became a burden. Although no one said anything about her, her face was burning. She could even read the word contempt from Yi Tianli's eyes. As for Imo, since she was expelled from the devil realm, she never looked at her again. Whether she screamed or trembled in fear, Imo didn't respond and completely ignored her. But when the shame reached the extreme, it would turn into anger, and even jealousy would crawl up to the surface. They were both women. Why was Imo the devil lord? Why could she be the center of attention? And she, who had cultivated for 2,000 or 3,000 years, was simply like a waste in front of this devil lord. Becoming a joke, Gong Huanyin had been Imo's protector for more than a year. Although Imo did not let protectors accompany him often, protectors could still move around freely in Imo Palace. Therefore, when Yi Tianli and Shinjuli stayed in Imo Palace, some of their actions still fell into her eyes. She knew that these two most outstanding men were once fascinated by the Devil Lord and spared no effort in pursuing her. Gong Huanyin was also a woman, but she, Gong Huanyin, was trying her best to compete for the position of a servant in front of the supreme divinity. On what basis? Why was God so unfair? Give the best things to that woman? That's how a person is, that's how a man is. Moreover, she didn't even dare to fart in front of her. Just being stared at by her made him want to kneel down. Once jealousy rose in a person's heart, all the kindness that the other party had shown him in the past would be thrown away. She had forgotten that Imo had once taught her martial arts, forgotten that Imo had once saved her life, forgotten that Imo had once treated her internal injuries. Her heart was filled with indignation, especially when she noticed that the supreme divinity beside her deliberately went against Imo. The indignation and dissatisfaction rose to the peak. Chapter 17:20. She began to cause trouble intentionally or unintentionally. For example, when Shinjuli changed positions with her, she deliberately slowed down her movements so that Shinjuli could not grasp the exact timing. Of course, she was more timid and did not dare to play too many tricks in front of an expert, so as to avoid being seen through. Therefore, she only quietly caused trouble in a small range that no one could see through. Imo, Shinjuli, and Yi Tianli's attention were all on the Dark Eagle, so no one had the time to care about her. Gong Huanyin only caused a little trouble, but it was not enough to delay Shinjuli. Moreover, he quickly grasped her rhythm and pattern. When he changed positions again, he would advance and grasp the timing extremely accurately. Every time, he would land almost at the same time as Imo. Obviously, this divine venerable was always paying attention to the Devil Lord's movements even in such a fierce battle. The jealousy in Gong Huanyin's heart was about to break through the sky. When jealousy filled her heart, she forgot her fear and gave birth to courage. She also wanted to make a move. She also wanted to let the divine venerable see that she was not a good-for-nothing. At this time the dark eagles that came to attack had been killed, and only 3 were left. 2 of them were intercepted by Shinjuli and Imo, and they were fighting each other. The other one probably saw that Gong Huanyin, this soft persimmon, was the easiest to pinch and swooped down on her. The iron claws and blood hooks were right in front of her. If she did not make a move, this dark eagle would not be able to break the enchantment around her in a hurry. The dark eagle that attacked Shinjuli had already had 6 heads cut off, and it would be finished off in a moment. Shinjuli had enough opportunity to kill that dark eagle and then deal with this one. In order to show her ability, Gong Huanyin steeled her heart and directly pierced the enchantment that protected her. A green sword light slashed towards one of the dark eagle's heads. The enchantment that Shinjuli set up for her blocked the outside but not the inside, so she easily broke it. This sword slash was quite powerful. It could be considered as condensing all the essence of her power. When she was inside the barrier, she saw Imo and Shinjuli cutting the dark eagle's head like cutting tofu. She thought that this dark eagle was just SOSO. But once she made a move herself, she realized that it was far from the truth. As soon as the protective barrier around her was broken, she immediately felt the sweet and fishy hurricane of the Netherworld Hawk's attack. The hurricane seemed to want to tear apart a person's skin, causing her to be unable to open her eyes as soon as she left the barrier. Even the thrust of his sword was deflected. In the blink of an eye, the nether hawk's blood-red claws had arrived before her eyes. That nether eagle is very big. Even one of its claws is the size of a small round table. Its 5 sharp claws are like 5 blood-red scimitars, piercing towards Gong Huanyan. Gong Huanyan screamed in fright. The netherworld eagle was too fast for her to dodge. She closed her eyes in fright. Idiot! Imo happened to be on her side. When she saw this scene, she couldn't help but curse. In this critical moment, she didn't have time to think carefully. She lifted her sleeve and pulled Gong Huanyan in her direction. Gong Huanyan couldn't stand still and fell at her feet with a plop. The moment Gong Huanyan fell to the ground, Imo suddenly waved her sword and took advantage of the opportunity to cut off one of the Dark Eagle's heads. That Dark Eagle immediately turned around to attack Imo. Imo had just finished off another Dark Eagle and didn't even have time to catch her breath. Seeing this Dark Eagle attacking again, she didn't have time to think. She raised her sword and was about to stab a second time when she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her chest. Chapter 1721. The pain was 10 times worse than being cut by a knife. It was so painful that she staggered, blacked out, and fell. Everything happened in an instant. By the time Xinjiuli realized it, Imo's body had already fallen. Almost at the same time, Gong Huanyan, who was lying there, suddenly slipped. With a scream, she fell from the other direction. The cliff was half a foot wide and there were cliffs on both sides. Coincidentally, Imo and Gong Huanyan fell on opposite sides of the cliff. Red Lotus Hellfire was at the bottom of both cliffs. With Gong Huanyan's ability, she would have no chance of survival if she fell. As for Imo, she was a devil master with superior skills. Even if she fell off the cliff, she would have the ability to save herself and jump back up quickly. Gong Huanyan screamed shrilly. That shrill scream could almost pierce one's eardrums. Help! Help! That scream rolled all the way down. The figure on the cliff was rapidly shrinking. The wind whistled in her ears. It almost tore Imo's dress. The fire below was also getting brighter. Normally, falling off the cliff was nothing. She could get back up with a little effort. But now, her heart was in so much pain that her limbs were weak. She couldn't exert any strength at all. Ever since she was reborn on this continent, she had an unmentionable disease. Her heart would hurt every year. Every time it happened, it would hurt so much that she wished she hadn't been born in this world. During the heart attack, all the magic in her body would disappear, and her limbs would become as soft as cotton. At this time, she didn't even have the ability to protect herself. This heart attack was rather punctual. Every year it would happen in the middle of May. Every time it happened, she would be able to recover as long as she could get through this day. She was a devil master, and there were many enemies who coveted her. Naturally, she wouldn't let anyone know about her heart attack. Every time the heart attack was about to happen, she would arrange everything in Mo Palace in advance and then go into seclusion. She would seal herself in a space and roll around or scream, but no one would know. It was only May now. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be the time for the heart attack to happen. Moreover, according to the symptoms of her body just now, it would only happen tomorrow. But this time, the heart attack didn't act according to common sense. It actually happened at such a critical time. She did not even have the ability to save herself. She could only watch as she fell toward the Red Lotus Hellfire below. When she fell, she also heard Gong Huanyan's fall. She didn't see her figure, so without asking, she must have fallen to the other side. Xinjiuli? He must have gone to save Gong Huanyan. After all, she was his partner. After all, her skills were the weakest and she was the one who needed saving the most, and he was a powerful demon master. In his mind, he probably didn't need him to save him at all. The speed of this free fall was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she had already fallen several hundred meters. She involuntarily turned her head downwards. In her widened eyes, she saw the Red Lotus Hellfire leaping about. It was bright red as if it was waiting for a feast of flesh and blood. She was the Devil Lord. Would she be reborn in the Red Lotus Hellfire? Probably not, right? She was not a phoenix. Moreover, the Red Lotus Hellfire was specially used to burn all kinds of evil in the world. If she still had her magic, she could set up a barrier in the fire. She wouldn't be burned for a short period of time. Maybe she could hold on until reinforcements arrived. But now that she had fallen, she would probably be directly refined. Chapter 1722. Of course, she was never one to admit defeat. She would never admit defeat until the very last moment. While falling, she desperately waved her hands to get closer to the cliff. Once, the sky splitter in her palm even pierced the cliff. The sword did pierce the cliff, but her hand was too weak to hold the sword. Under the huge impact she could not hold the hilt at all. As a result, she lost her sword again. The sky splitter was very strange, but when she had magic, it would automatically find its master. If she did not have magic, it would not move at all. Her palms were burning, and her heart was in so much pain that she wanted to dig her heart out. Coupled with the pain on her back, all kinds of pain accumulated and made her vision blurry. She could barely see anything clearly. Great despair struck her heart, and she simply closed her eyes. Forget it. That was it. She had tried her best, but fate refused to let her go. Perhaps this was her destiny as the Devil Master. Little Nianma's shadow flashed in her mind, and her heart was in turmoil. That was her child. She had promised to play with him for a month. Now, it seemed that she was going to break her promise. She had already sensed the unique scorching heat of the Red Lotus hellfire below. In a few seconds she would fall into it and directly turn into ashes. Swoosh! Suddenly she heard the sound of the wind. Her waist was suddenly tightened, and she was suddenly in someone's arms. It felt like a parachute suddenly opened when falling from a high altitude, and the speed of the fall suddenly slowed down. A cold breath rushed into her nose and her body trembled. She opened her eyes. It was a familiar hug and a familiar person. She saw the beautiful curve of the person's chin and a pair of deep blue eyes. Shinjuli. He jumped down to save her. His face was a little pale, but his arms were holding her tightly as if he wanted to strangle her into his bones. She could even feel the trembling of his arms around her. After he held her in his arms, he drew the sword in his palm forward. Therefore, he held her with one arm and held the sword that was inserted into the mountain wall with the other hand. The two of them swayed a few times as if they were playing on a swing. Shinjuli simply pierced the sword deeper and then fixed her to the cliff wall. Do you want to die? Shinjuli reprimanded him. His eyes were filled with rage. Why didn't you struggle? She was a dignified devil master, yet she was actually free-falling from a cliff. If he had not followed her down in time, she would have fallen into the Red Lotus karmic fire below and been burned to ashes. Imo was held so tightly that she could barely breathe. She opened her mouth and asked, "Where's Gong Huanyin? You didn't save her?" Shinjuli's arm stiffened slightly, and his voice turned cold. You still care about others at this time? She's your companion after all? Imo blurted out again. It's easier to save you. Shinjuli answered without hesitation. Only after he finished speaking did he realize that his answer was a little nonsensical. In terms of distance, Gong Huanyin was the closest to him at that time. If it was easier to save Gong Huanyin, it would have been easier for him. At that time he watched as the two women fell, one on the left and one on the right. Almost without thinking he instinctively followed Imo and jumped down. Chapter 1723. Of course, when he jumped down he kicked the dumbfounded Yi Tianli and kicked him off the side where Gong Huanyin fell. His series of actions were almost subconsciously completed quickly. When he reacted, he was already in mid-air, chasing after the falling red figure like a meteor chasing after the moon. He thought that she did not have to wait for him to save her, but he did not expect that she did not even struggle all the way. At most, she stabbed her broken sword into the cliff, but she did not stop at all. She fell very quickly and neatly. Fortunately, he jumped in time. Fortunately, she did not fall into the Red Lotus hellfire. Otherwise, what was the point of everything he did? Now he finally hugged her at the last moment. Once he hugged her, he could not let go. The two of them hung on the cliff with a sword. Their bodies were tightly intertwined just like Siamese twins. The familiar embrace, the familiar smell, the familiar feeling. Everything was so familiar. Imo squeezed into his embrace, the two of them breathed heavily, they were closer than ever before. Imo's body stiffened. Even after she regained her memory, she still had no immunity to this embrace. She wanted to push him away with all her might and draw a clear line between them, but at the same time she wanted to stay in his embrace. Layers of bitterness crawled out from her throat, as if she was wronged, as if she was angry, as if she was resentful, and as if she was longing. That indescribable emotion surged in her chest like a tidal wave, causing her to momentarily not know how to react. Her heart disease was like the pain of a pregnant woman who was about to give birth. It came in waves. The pain would stop for a few seconds and then it would stop again. At the beginning the pain would get worse and worse. When the pain reached its peak it would slow down again. Now was the beginning of the pain. After the first wave of pain stopped for a few seconds, she was attacked by an even more intense pain. She bit her lips hard to resist the pain. Your back is injured? After Shinjuli hugged her, he paused for a moment and then stroked her back. After her heart disease acted up, her magical power disappeared. Naturally, the injury on her back could no longer be covered by camouflage. Shinjuli touched the blood on his hand. His face changed as he looked at his blood-stained fingertips. The blood was dark purple and had a strange fishy smell. Clearly this was poisonous blood. Very quickly he found her wound. Shinjuli's face was even worse. He looked at her like a surging storm. "Why didn't you say earlier that you were injured so badly?" Amo's face had already turned green from the torment of her heart disease. In comparison, the injury on her back didn't seem that important. Although she tried her best to hold it in and not let herself moan, a layer of sweat had already formed on her forehead. She wanted to answer Shinjuli's question, or she wanted to rebut him. For example, for the sake of the big picture. However, she didn't know if it was because the pain was too intense or because she couldn't suppress the grievances in her heart, but after she opened her mouth, her lips trembled violently and her throat was a little dry. She couldn't say anything and just turned her head away. After the magical power disappeared, her pair of eyes turned black again. At this moment, it was as if her eyes were covered with a layer of water. Shinjuli's heart suddenly trembled and he couldn't say anything else. This cliff was obviously not the place to talk and heal. Shinjuli calmed down a little and whispered, "Bear with it. Let's go up and I'll treat you." His left arm hugged her and his right arm swung the sword in his hand. He took advantage of the momentum to flip up. Chapter 1724. Flying skills could not be used in this formation, so Shinjuli used superior Qinggong at this time. Fortunately, his Qinggong was also excellent. Even if he was carrying a person, the speed of his ascent was not slow. He flew up a few hundred meters in a few minutes and landed on the cliff again. On the cliff, there was a dark eagle with half of its head flying around. This dark eagle was also strange. It only attacked the people who landed on the cliff and did not care about the people who fell just now. When Shinjuli carried a person up, the dark eagle immediately discovered his whereabouts. With a sharp cry, it swooped down towards Shinjuli. Shinjuli was also not polite. His left arm was still carrying Imo, while his right hand spun like a whirlwind and cut off two heads of the dark eagle. Just at this time, Yi Tianli also carried Gong Huanyan up. He had just stood still and did not have time to see what happened to Shinjuli and the rest. The dark eagle with only two heads was already rushing towards them like a cannonball. Following the dark eagle's flight, Shinjuli said, "You guys take care of it." Then the supreme god carried Imo, who was unknown whether she was alive or dead, and flew away. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the purple smoke. Yi Tianli was speechless. He had the urge to curse. When the two women fell, he was just stunned. When he was about to jump down to save Imo, he was kicked down in another direction by Shinjuli, who was much faster than him. He only reacted when the other side of the cliff fell from the sky. Although he wanted to curse Shinjuli's ancestors, he knew that the overall situation was more important. It was more important to save people first. Fortunately, Gong Huanyan was not a complete waste. After she fell, she still tried her best. She waved her hands, and when she fell halfway, she finally stabbed her sword into the cliff to stabilize her body. This allowed Yi Tianli to catch up with her. Gong Huanyan was so scared that two of her three souls ran away. There was still one soul that was in a daze, only screaming crazily. Yi Tianli thought her screams were too noisy, but he was too lazy to comfort her, so he simply sealed her mute acupoint. After his ears were clear, he lifted her up. He was still half crippled and could not exert any strength in one of his arms. Moreover, he had the witch beside him who could not help him and would only cause him more trouble. Flying up consumed quite a bit of his strength and he was still panting at the moment. Now that the Divine Venerable had kicked such a big trouble like Dark Eagle over, did he think that he was not flustered enough? The Dark Eagle saw him standing there as an eyesore, so it vented all its hatred on him. Its millstone-like body circled around him, and its 16 claws scratched. As long as Yi Tianli was distracted for a moment, he might be scratched until his intestines were pierced. Yi Tianli, who had always been cultured, refined, and noble, finally cursed. At this time he naturally did not care about taking care of Gong Huanyan. He casually placed her on the cliff and said, "Stand properly." He did not care whether she could stand or not. He turned around and went to deal with that crippled netherworld hawk. Gong Huanyan was in a sorry state. When she was pulled down by Imo, she knocked out a tooth. In the process of falling, she was scratched by the various protruding stones at the bottom of the cliff. There were several wounds on her body and her clothes were badly damaged. At this moment she knew that everyone could not take care of her. She could only hug the narrow ridge of the cliff on both sides and tremble there like a leaf in the wind. Fortunately, she did not fall down again. Chapter 1725. It was quite strenuous for Yi Tianli to deal with this dark eagle that only had 2 heads left. After all, he was injured and had fought for so long. He even saved someone in the middle. At this moment, his hands and feet were weak. If it was not for the fact that he had to fight for his life, he also wanted to lie down and rest. At this moment, he could only fight with this dark eagle. Fortunately, this dark eagle was also crippled. After losing 6 heads, it could not find its balance and often made mistakes in its judgment of direction. Xinjiuli and Imo dealt with the dark eagle very easily. It was almost as if they could get rid of one in a few minutes. Now that he was fighting alone, Yi Tianli finally understood how big the gap between his skills and those 2 people was. Damn, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. Yi Tianli fought with it for almost an hour before he finally cut off its remaining 2 heads. The moment before the dark eagle exploded, he set up a barrier to protect himself and Gong Huanyan. "Can you still walk on your own?" Yi Tianli asked the woman lying down at his feet in annoyance. Gong Huanyan raised her head with tears in her eyes and gently shook her head. Her hands and feet were all weak now and the injuries on her body were very painful. Now that only the 2 of them were left on the cliff, her only hope was Yi Tianli. "Venerable? Venerable Yi, can you take me with you?" Yi Tianli glanced at her and only replied with 2 words, "No." Then he flew up, leaped over her and ran forward. Before he left, he still reminded Gong Huanyan, "You can just lie here. Later there might be a dark eagle flying out." This sentence made Gong Huanyan, whose legs were weak, jump up as if she was electrocuted. She hurriedly ran behind him. "Venerable Yi, wait for me. Wait for me." For the sake of the overall situation, Yi Tianli would not really abandon her. Seeing that she followed him, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief in his heart and slowed down a little. He kept a distance from her so that if she was in danger, he could save her in time. He still had some regrets about this Gong Huanyan in his heart. Gong Huanyan was very beautiful. She was the rare type of lady in Mo Palace. She blushed when she spoke and her eyes were watery. In Mo Palace, where there were strong women everywhere, she was unique. She was also born as if she was made of water, so she was very popular with the men of the Devil Palace. Basically, they couldn't bear to scold her. Moreover, her kung fu was considered quite good in the Mo Palace, especially her water control technique, which was rare and accurate. At that time, Yi Tianli went to Mo Palace many times in order to pursue Imo naturally. He had seen Gong Huanyan a few times. At that time, he felt that her temperament was not like that of a demon. Instead, she was like those shy immortals in the immortal world who had reincarnated wrongly. He still had some admiration for her and felt that this which was a little special. He had even mentioned her in front of Imo, saying that she was suitable to be a female guardian because she was more slender and sensitive. The Devil Lord lacked someone like her. At that time, Imo didn't care about anything and didn't care much about anything. When he heard him mention it, he handed this matter over to head steward Himu and asked him to observe her. If she was suitable, he would let her be a protector. There were many male protectors around Imo, but there weren't many female protectors. There were only 3 of them in total. Including her, there would be 4 of them. Himu probably felt that the Devil Lord lacked such a slender person, so he pushed the boat along with the current and let her be a protector. When you don't experience something with someone, you will never truly understand a person. Chapter 1726. When you don't experience something with someone, you will never truly understand a person. Only when you are in a life and death situation or when you get along with someone, can you see a person's true nature. He knew that Gong Huanyan was timid, but he didn't expect her to be so timid. Timid and unafraid, with no integrity. He often heard people say that Xinjiuli was able to see through the situation and plan well. Why didn't he see Gong Huanyan's true nature in advance this time? Logically speaking, Xinjiuli had stayed in Mo Palace for a month, so he should know Gong Huanyan, right? Why did he choose such a person as his partner? Did he not see her true nature, or did the Supreme Divinity have other ideas? The seal was such a big matter and his team was in the lead, so he should choose an equally strong partner. Even if he didn't choose Imo, shouldn't he choose someone with high skills among the witches? Even if he couldn't see through Gong Huanyan's true nature, he should be able to see through her skills, right? Then why did he choose her so quickly? It was as if he had already seen through her. What was the Supreme Divinity thinking? Yi Tianli felt that he was smart enough, but he couldn't figure out the Supreme Divinity's thoughts. The thoughts of a god, don't guess, you won't understand. Forget it, he won't guess any more. Imo didn't expect Shinjuli to leave with her in his arms. One should know that the two people he left there, one was a cripple and the other was a cripple. Wasn't he afraid that these two people would die here and cause the seal to fail? However, this thought only flashed in her mind for a moment, and the third wave of pain came. It was so painful that her face turned pale. It was so painful that she wanted to scream and roll on the ground. Fortunately, she still had a trace of clarity. She knew that Shinjuli was holding her, and she didn't want him to see her in such a sorry state. Therefore, she clenched her teeth as hard as she could. There was only one thought in her drowsy mind. Don't cry out, don't cry out. Unknowingly, she bit her lip until it bled. If it hurts, just cry out. Why are you holding it in? A voice rang in her ears. Don't want to cry out. She was the Devil Lord, she didn't want to be such a coward. Especially in front of him, she couldn't show any weakness. She still clenched her teeth, not allowing herself to scream. In the past, when her illness acted up, she would seal herself in a sealed space. When she was in pain, she could roll around inside, scream and cry to her heart's content. Once her illness was over, she would come out in all her glory. But now she could only endure with all her might. Shuema. She heard him call her name. His voice was a little hoarse, as if he was suppressing his anger. This name made her heart tremble again. Of course, her heart hurt even more. She closed her eyes tightly, and even her eyelashes were trembling from the pain. Suddenly, she felt something cold on her lips. Something soft and hard was forced into her mouth. Bite this. She bit her lips subconsciously. She was in so much pain that she didn't know what she was biting. She only felt that the texture was not bad, and there was a faint fragrance. Most importantly, no matter how hard she bit, her teeth wouldn't break. Gradually, the thing in her mouth tasted bloody and sweet. Something flowed into her mouth. She was in so much pain that even her mouth was spasming, but after that thing flowed into her mouth, the pain seemed to lessen a little, so she instinctively swallowed a few mouthfuls. Chapter 1727. The warm and sweet liquid with a strange cold fragrance slid down her throat. Wherever it went, her spasming muscles relaxed a little. There wasn't much of the liquid. After swallowing a few mouthfuls, it gradually stopped. She instinctively felt unsatisfied, so she fiercely bit down on the thing in her mouth again. When she bit down just now, it was purely because of the pain that she wanted to find something to bite, so she didn't know how to use her internal energy. Now, in order to make more of the liquid flow out, she simply used her internal energy, so the liquid happily flowed out again. Purple smoke floated around her, and an opaque spherical enchantment appeared in an empty space. Inside the enchantment, Shinjuli looked at her, who was desperately sucking on his finger in his arms, and his eyes darkened. Probably because it was too painful, her entire body was soaked in cold sweat. Layer after layer of cold sweat appeared on her beautiful face, but she didn't make a sound from beginning to end. She was so strong that it made him want to pull her over and beat her up. This kind of pain didn't seem like a simple back injury. He casually made a bed and put her on it. He wanted to check her injuries first, but she tightly held on to his hand, and he couldn't pull his hand away. He could only let her bite first and use his other hand to check her pulse. His eyebrows gradually furrowed as he looked at her. Her heart was beating very abnormally. She also had spasms and her face was frighteningly pale. Was this a heart attack? It seemed like it was a chronic illness. Did it hurt this much every time? When he wasn't by her side, did she always bear it by herself? As long as an outsider knew a secret, it would soon no longer be a secret. Imo kept her secret very well. Even her most capable subordinate, General Manager Himu, didn't know. It seemed like when her chronic illness acted up, she probably closed herself in a corner and gritted her teeth to bear it. He held her in his arms and casually wiped the sweat from her forehead. He looked at her beautiful face and even her lips were trembling. If it hurts, cry it out. You'll feel better if you cry it out. His voice was gentle, and it made the half-conscious Imo's nose sour. Ever since she came to this world, although her status was respected, she didn't have anyone by her side that she could truly rely on. No matter how painful it was, she could only bear it and bear it by herself. At first she didn't feel that this was a grievance, but now she was injured. People are always more vulnerable when they are injured. His soft words made her, who was still in a daze, feel her eyes sting. Coupled with the fact that she was in so much pain, she felt even more aggrieved. Although she was still biting her lips with all her might, her tears finally flowed out. Her eyelashes were wet, and tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. A finger brushed past the corner of her eyes, and she was hugged tightly in someone's arms. Then she heard him say, "I'm sorry, Shuama. I'm sorry." His voice was extremely hoarse, as if it directly impacted her heart. This made the grievances that she had been suppressing in her chest surge up even more. Her tears flowed even faster, but her lips were still biting his finger, unwilling to let go. Shinjuli looked down at her in his arms. How long had it been since he last saw her cry? In the past, she had cried in front of him a few times. Sometimes it was fake crying, and sometimes it was because she was angry. She cried and laughed like a child, but it was the real her. After reuniting with him, she seemed to be wearing a mask. She was either cold like a block of ice that couldn't be touched, or like a hedgehog that wanted to prick anyone she saw. The most common expression was that she was expressionless. Even if she smiled, it was a fake smile. She had never cried before. Chapter 1728. Unlike now, when she finally stopped resisting and began to cry. She cried very hard. Although there was no sound, her tears flowed like a stream, wetting his hand. He couldn't wipe it clean. The formation of her heart disease was most likely related to the pain in her heart. She had been holding it in for the past few years and couldn't vent it. The more she held it in, the worse and more painful her heart disease would be. Her heart disease needed to be cured. She had to really cry out to vent her pent-up emotions. Only then could she have hope of recovering. So Shinjuli watched her cry and didn't say anything to comfort her. While she was crying hard, he lowered his head and treated the wound on her hand. A layer of skin had been scraped off from her delicate palms. Her palms were covered in blood, sweat, and mud. He used the cleaning spell to clean her body. The wound on her hand was only a superficial one. After he applied a special ointment, the wound began to heal quickly and was soon healed. At this time, Amo was still a little dazed. She had lost her magic and was half dazed like a child. As she cried, she forgot to suck his blood and began to rub her eyes with her hand. Shinjuli could finally withdraw his hand. He held one of her hands to stop her from rubbing it. She probably felt uncomfortable. Her eyelashes fluttered, showing signs of waking up. A faint white light emitted from his hand and enveloped her whole body. "How long have you been suffering from this heart disease?" Shinjuli asked. His magnetic and gentle voice was like the sound of a cello, with a kind of coaxing. This was a kind of hypnotism. It had the power to make people have no choice but to answer. If Imo was fine, she naturally wouldn't be affected by this hypnotism. However, she had lost all her magic and was weaker than an ordinary warrior. Naturally, she fell for it easily. So she was very honest. 3 years? How often does it happen? 1 year. When does it usually happen? Every year in the middle of May. She was still a little confused. It should happen more than 10 days later. It's only the beginning of May now. After she swallowed his blood, the pain in her heart seemed to ease a little and she could speak normally. Shinjuli. Her heart disease acting up early probably had something to do with the injury on her back. His eyes darkened as he flipped her body over. He stared at her back. Her clothes were intact, but there was a large blood stain. There was even purple blood oozing out. Shinjuli waved his sleeve, and Amo's clothes tore apart, revealing her bloodied back. Shinjuli secretly gritted his teeth. There was an extremely deep laceration on her back. It was at least half a foot long, and the deepest part of the laceration was so deep that one could faintly see the white bone inside. Furthermore, looking at the freshness of the wound, she had been injured for at least 16 hours. 16 hours ago, they hadn't even entered the formation. Needless to say, it was left behind when she explored the formation alone. It must have been difficult for her to grit her teeth and hold on for so long. Shinjuli knew very well how painful it was to be bitten by the venomous beasts here. He looked at her pale face and was furious. She didn't know if he was angry that she didn't know how to cherish her body, or that he didn't notice it in time. If an ordinary immortal or demon suffered such an injury, they would have been rolling around in pain. It must have been difficult for her to hold on as if nothing had happened. This time, if her heart disease hadn't acted up, she would have probably continued to hide it. The wound was on her shoulder and back. It was indeed difficult for her to treat and bandage it. Therefore, she carelessly applied some antidote and even used demonic magic to expel the poison. Chapter 1729. The wound was on her shoulder and back, and it was difficult for her to bandage it herself. Therefore, she simply applied some antidote on it and used her magic to expel the poison. However, she didn't know that all her methods were useless against the poison. It would only get worse and worse. In the end, her whole body would fester. Imo swallowed a lot of his blood, and the pain in her heart eased a little. Her confused mind finally cleared up a little. When she woke up, she felt a chill on her back. It was as if she was wearing nothing. She was shocked. When she opened her eyes, she saw a light blue robe. It took her a while to realize that it was Shinjioli's robe. Then she was shocked to find herself lying on Shinjioli's knees. His cool fingers were busy on her naked back. This posture. Amo's body stiffened. She wanted to turn over. Suddenly she felt a few fingers pressing on her back. A voice came from above her head. "Do you want me to look in front of you?" Amo was speechless. "Bro." She gritted her teeth and sneered. "The Divine Lord is the role model of the 6 realms. How can you say such immoral words?" She wanted to say shameless words, but changed her mind. She was the Devil Lord. She had to be polite when she scolded people. "I'm just telling the truth." Shinjioli's voice was neither cold nor warm. Amo thought about it. She did want to roll over, but her clothes had been torn open. If she rolled over, the scenery in front of her would be exposed. She clenched her teeth and pulled her clothes closer to cover her chest. Then she struggled to get up. The aura on his body made her feel extremely unstable, so she subconsciously wanted to stay away from him. However, he held her in place with one hand. "Don't worry. I won't do anything to you. I'm just treating your wounds." He didn't know what kind of ointment he put on her wound. It was warm and different from his usual ointment. Imo had already recovered Ning Shuema's memories. After living by his side for so long, Ning Shuema was very familiar with his ointment. She remembered that when he applied the ointment on her body, it was slightly cold and had a high viscosity. It could be considered a semi-ointment. But this time it was in the form of a liquid and was very warm. After dripping into her wound, a warm feeling spread throughout her body. Originally, the pain there was like being stung by a scorpion, but after the medicine dripped in, the pain lessened quite a bit. Drop by drop, the medicine dripped into her body. What was even rarer was that not a single drop flowed out. All of it went into her wound. Was he dripping his own blood? Imo smelled a hint of blood. She turned her head to look, but her face was on his lap. As soon as she moved her head, he gently pressed it down. "Don't move." Imo didn't know what to feel. Subconsciously, she didn't want to owe anyone any more. "This injury. I can treat it myself. Let me go." "Imo, we don't have much time," Shinjili suddenly said. Imo didn't react for a moment. "We have to seal this formation in 2 days. When the time comes, everyone has to do their best. The 8th sealing point you have to guard is also very important. There can't be any accidents. If you're injured, you'll be a hindrance to the plan." Shinjili spoke slowly but clearly. Amo's body stiffened. He was treating her for the sake of the big picture. What else could she say? Chapter 1730. Amo's body stiffened slightly. Shinjining was treating her from the perspective of the big picture. What else could she say? She couldn't refuse at all. She gritted her teeth and stopped moving, allowing him to treat her. She still refused to admit defeat. "I didn't drag the team down even though I was injured." "Mem, you're great." Shinjili complimented her. There was a hint of teasing in his voice. Amo was speechless. She had the illusion that she had kicked a pile of cotton. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but the pain in her heart attacked her again. She subconsciously curled up her body, waiting for the pain that felt like it was going to tear her whole body apart again. The pain in her heart was getting worse each time, so she stiffened her body in advance. She subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand into her sleeve so that she could hold it tightly. Unexpectedly, before she could withdraw her hand, he held it. "Don't force yourself to endure the pain. The more you endure, the worse the pain will be. Come on, call it out." His palm was as cold as a popsicle. Imo subconsciously shrank back. He seemed to realize something. His palm gradually warmed up. It was a temperature that she was familiar with. She didn't know how many times she had held this pair of hands in her previous life. She was familiar with almost every line on his palm. She still hated him, but her body was subconsciously greedy for this embrace. She was greedy for the feeling of holding his hands tightly. This pair of hands used to be her strongest support. She used to risk her life to hold this pair of hands forever. He was like her poison. She knew it was poisonous, but she was shamelessly greedy for it. Especially when she was at her weakest, holding his hand again and feeling the warmth of his hand, she actually felt a shameful sense of relief. When a person's pain reached its peak, only instinct was left. Gratitude, resentment, and heartlessness could be temporarily thrown aside. She subconsciously held his hand tightly. When the pain climbed up, she wanted to bite her lip again. "Don't force yourself. Call it out. Come on, call it out. He coaxed, patting her back gently with his other hand. These words were so ambiguous. It seemed like there were such lines in some porn movies. Imo was in so much pain that she wanted to scream and roll on the ground. When a person was in extreme pain, they really wanted to scream out loud. She did have the urge to scream, but she was used to enduring it. Even if she wanted to scream, she wanted to find a place where there was no one around and not in front of him. What's more, Yi Tianli and Gong Huanyan should be here soon. If they heard him, the dignified demon lord, wailing like a ghost, "You're still so concerned about your reputation at this time?" Shenjuli obviously saw through her misgivings. He raised his hand and rubbed her hair. "Don't worry, I've set up a wizardry barrier. They won't hear you even if you scream yourself hoarse." Imo sincerely felt that she didn't want to think too much about it, but could this supreme divinity please not make such a pun? "As for me, I've seen you in an even more pathetic state. What are you embarrassed about? Come on, scream. Don't be afraid of disturbing me. I'll just seal off my hearing." Shenjuli continued to remove her defenses. Imo, she was in so much pain, but when she heard what he said, the corner of her lips couldn't help but twitch. His posture was quite like a young master who was flirting with a good woman. "Girl, scream. Scream as much as you want. No one will hear you even if you scream yourself hoarse." She held his hand tightly. When the pain was unbearable, she couldn't help but bite his palm again. Chapter 1731. She held his hand tightly. When she couldn't take the pain anymore, she couldn't help but bite his palm. She said fiercely, "If you want to scream, scream with me." "Ah, it hurts. It hurts so much." Shinjuli's eyes flashed and he actually screamed. His voice was so loud that it scared Imo. No matter when or where, this person was always calm and composed. Even if thousands of soldiers and horses died in front of him, he wouldn't even bat an eyelid. She had never seen him lose his composure before. And she had never heard him scream before. Now that she suddenly heard it, she even forgot about her own pain. She almost suspected that this person in front of her was possessed by a hot-tempered brat. He was really screaming and didn't care about his usual image at all. It was as if he was really in extreme pain. Influenced by him, Imo finally let go and screamed out loud. She screamed loudly in his arms, yelled loudly that she was in pain, cried loudly. Everything followed her instincts. She was so immersed in her screams that she didn't notice when Shinjuli stopped screaming. He hugged her with one hand and she held his other hand tightly without any gap. It was as if they would never separate like this, as if they could be together forever. It was as if many years ago when there was no gap between them. She lay in his arms and laughed happily, screamed happily, and even kissed him happily. He looked at her deeply and for a long time. He didn't think that she would ruin her image at all. She was still the girl in his heart, the girl who proudly said that she would conquer him, the girl he loved for 3 lifetimes. A tear slowly seeped out from the corner of his eye and fell on her face. It mixed with her tears and couldn't be separated anymore. How long had it been? She had never screamed so crazily before. How long had it been? She had never released the stone in her heart? No matter how much pain, no matter how much suffering, she had always swallowed it down and kept it in her heart. Therefore, the nest had produced poison, the nest had produced heart disease. When she was in pain, she was no longer alone. When she was in pain, he was by her side. When he was by her side, it was as if the pain was shared and became less unbearable. When she screamed and screamed, the pain did lessen quite a bit. She didn't have to endure until her whole body trembled. She didn't know when, but his palm had moved to her chest. As she screamed, a white light emitted from his palm and slowly penetrated her chest. It drilled into her heart meridian and slowly moved forward, dredging her convulsing blood vessels bit by bit. Her depression was released along with her shout. Coupled with the activation of his inner energy, the pain in her heart finally dissipated gradually. After an unknown amount of time, Imo finally stopped yelling. She was slightly out of breath and her forehead was covered in sweat. After yelling for a while, she felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction. The pain in her heart once again, it was over. She heaved a sigh of relief. Calling him out this time was really useful. This time the pain was actually much lighter than before. She lowered her head and her body. She didn't know when she tts, tstss, tt, tstss, bang. Imo blushed. Chapter 1732. You. She turned over and wanted to get up. He pressed his palm and said in a deep voice, "Don't move, it's almost done." Only then did she clearly see the white light in his palm. She recognized that it was his healing light. Her heart skipped a beat. Was he treating her heart disease? She could feel that his internal energy was slowly moving in her heart, and it was gradually unblocked. Imo used to be a doctor himself, so he figured out the principle after thinking for a while. When she went through the calamity in her previous life, it was the time when she could not vent or relax. So after the calamity, the knot in her heart directly became depressed and became a heart disease. The way he teased her just now, making her cry and scream, was just a special treatment method. He let her vent her depression first, then he used his internal energy to help her unblock her heart meridian. In this way, the heart disease that followed her for 3 years and caused her to live a life worse than death might be cured. After understanding the principle, Imo was relieved. He also said at the right time, "Close your eyes and feel my internal energy, then use your own internal energy to follow." He told her the rules of the follow-up treatment. Imo naturally would not disagree with him at this time. She tried her best to ignore the appearance of her body lying in his arms and followed his internal energy. After crossing the cliff, Yi Tianli finally breathed a sigh of relief. Gong Huanyan also followed unyieldingly. She did not fall behind at all. Sure enough, when people were forced into a corner, their potential was limitless. However, after crossing the cliff, she sat down. She did not know if she was tired or scared, but her legs kept playing the pipa. She looked around. Where are the Divine Lord and the rest? Yi Tianli's eyes fell on the milky white ball enchantment not far away, and his face did not look good, probably inside. The ball was the size of a small house, and the scene inside could not be seen from the outside. Gong Huanyan struggled to stand up and ran toward the ball enchantment. "Divine Lord." As soon as she called out, she was stopped by Yi Tianli. Yi Tianli's voice was strict. "Shut up. What are you shouting for?" Gong Huanyan opened her eyes wide. "I want to see if the Divine Lord and the rest are really inside. Maybe this enchantment ball was not set by the Divine Lord. If they are not inside, we can look for them in other places." "Is there even a need to look?" Yi Tianli's voice turned cold. "The immortal qi in this enchantment is not ordinary. One look and I can tell that it was set up by the Supreme God. Naturally they are inside." Gong Huanyan blurted out, "What are they doing inside?" Yi Tianli ignored her. Just now he didn't see Shinjioli and Amo's specific appearance clearly. He only vaguely saw Amo's body curled up badly. She must have been seriously injured and Shinjioli was probably healing her inside. However, it's just healing. Is there a need to set up such a barrier that isolates all external interference? And it was not transparent. Was Amo seriously injured? It shouldn't be, right? He didn't see the dark hawk attack her. Instead, it looked like she slipped down. With her martial arts, even if she slipped, she shouldn't be injured, right? Moreover, Shinjioli had jumped down in time to save her. What was going on? He suddenly thought of the suspicious bloodstain on Amo's back, and his heart skipped a beat. Perhaps Amo had been injured long ago, but she couldn't handle it herself. She had been holding on, so she endured until now. Otherwise, with her skills and habits, she shouldn't have let the bloodstain stay on her clothes. Gong Huanyan looked at the enchantment reluctantly. "What should we do now?" Chapter 1733. Yi Tianli sat down and only said one word, "Wait." Then he closed his eyes and meditated. If there were no accidents, there would be a tough battle later, so he had to seize every opportunity to recover his strength. Gong Huanyan did not dare to do anything else. She looked at the barrier and a trace of uneasiness flashed through her eyes. Were the Divine Lord and the Devil Lord really inside? Did the Devil Lord change his mind? Or was the Divine Lord unwilling to give up on the Devil Lord? Could they still be together? The fire of jealousy ignited in her heart and she lowered her eyes. When she was pulled down by Amo just now, she did want to take the opportunity to plot against Amo. Even if she made him stumble, she might be scratched by the Nether Eagle. If she was scratched by the Nether Eagle, even if she did not die, she would be half dead. However, she was timid and before she could do anything, Amo fell down by himself. Gong Huanyan was overjoyed at that time. She was afraid that Shinjioli would jump down to save Amo, so she rolled to the other side. She felt that Shinjioli would jump down to save her first, not the other woman, given how protective he was of her. She did not expect that she miscalculated. When she fell, she saw Shinjioli jump to the other side. He did not have the intention to save her at all. She panicked and used all her strength to scratch desperately to stop herself from falling. She waited for Yi Tianli to come and save her. She looked gentle and elegant, but after all, she grew up in the devil realm. At this moment, looking at the white barrier, all kinds of unbearable images flashed through her mind. Would the Devil Lord regret it? Was he fooling around with the Divine Lord now? Of course, she did not dare to say these dirty thoughts out loud or even show them. She also sat down and tried to meditate to recover her strength. She told herself in her heart. It did not matter. She was about to reach the 8th sealed area. At that time, the Devil Lord and Yi Tianli, these two eyesores, would be left behind. She could then be alone with the Divine Lord. She had to find a way to become stronger and let the Divine Lord see her in a different light. The Divine Lord's Kung Fu was extremely powerful. She might be able to benefit greatly if she stayed by his side in the future. For example, he might personally teach her some Kung Fu, or give her some elixirs that could increase her Kung Fu quickly. In a few years she might become a real expert. At that time she would go to Mo Palace and show those who had looked down on her. She would let them know that she, Gong Huanyin, could also turn over a new leaf one day. Moreover, she had a special ability to seduce men. As long as she could get along with the Divine Lord for a long time, she might be able to seduce him to be her subject. Then he would become her big protective umbrella, and she would be able to do whatever she wanted in the 6 realms. In that case, that Devil Master might also have misgivings towards her in the future and call her sister. The future she imagined was so beautiful that she couldn't help but smile. Time ticked by. No one knew how much time had passed, but the people inside still had no intention of coming out. The spherical barrier was still standing there, motionless. Gong Huanyin finally lost her patience. After thinking for a while, she walked towards the ball. Unexpectedly, he had only taken a few steps when his feet seemed to be gripped by something, and he could not take another step forward. Subconsciously, she looked down and screamed in fright. A white skeletal hand emerged from the dark brown ground under her feet and directly grabbed her ankle. The cold and hard feeling crawled up her calf like a poisonous tongue. Chapter 1734. Her shrill cry finally woke up Yi Tianli, who was meditating. He opened his eyes and saw that there was no movement. Help! Help! Gong Huanyin screamed. The pair of skeletal hands were grabbing her ankle and pulling it inwards. Half of her calf had already sunk into the ground. She wanted to use her sword to cut the skeletal hands, but she obviously lost the initiative. The hands had already pulled her into the ground and she could not cut it. She struggled desperately and screamed desperately. At first she screamed, "Divine Lord, save me," but when she saw that the enchantment did not move at all, she helplessly screamed, "Venerable Yi, save me." Yi Tianli sat there and looked at her coldly. Did this woman only know how to rely on men? Could she be a little more mature and rely on herself for once? The skeletal hands were dragging Gong Huanyin down bit by bit. Slowly she had sunk to her thigh. The skeletal hands were not fast, but she could not break free. She could only watch herself sink into the ground bit by bit. How could she not be afraid? Venerable Yi, you can't just watch. If I die here, this enchantment will not be able to seal me. Gong Huanyin finally shouted out her trump card. That's hard to say. If you really die, I'll just go out again and find another witch to replace you. I remember that there is a guard in Mo Palace called Gong Luoluo. She is also very good at martial arts. This time she is also here. She can be the substitute. Her martial arts are not as good as mine. Gong Huanyin's face was pale. But she is much more courageous than you. Her reaction is also much better than yours. What's more, until now, I have not seen you helping the Divine Lord. You have caused a lot of trouble. Gong Huanyin opened her mouth slightly but could not refute. While she was talking, her waist had sunk into the ground and it had almost reached her chest. She could already feel the pressure of the soil. Gong Huanyin finally cried out in fear, "Venerable Yi, please save me. As long as you save me, I will do anything you want me to do. I am willing to go to your place as a slave." Aren't you going to the Divine Lord as a slave? Why did you abandon him and choose me so quickly? Or do you have a doppelganger technique? Yi Tianli laughed casually. Gong Huanyin choked. She gritted her teeth and said, Divine Lord promised me to arrange a good place for me. I can ask him to go to your place. I don't lack servants. Yi Tianli remained unmoved. Gong Huanyin was anxious. I can warm your bed, Pa. The white enchantment not far from her was finally broken. The Divine Venerable, who rarely wore a light blue robe, and the Devil Lord, who wore a red dress, walked out. Gong Huanyin was stunned and immediately shouted, "Supreme Divinity, save me! Supreme Divinity, save me!" Shen Jiuli glanced at her and then looked at Yi Tianli, who stood up. Does Venerable Yi really lack a bed-warming maid? Yi Tianli opened his mouth slightly and did not know how to answer. This is not. Of course he was not interested in Gong Huanyan. He just did not like her and wanted to punish her a little. Xinjuli interrupted him. She can't. You can choose another one when you get out. Yi Tianli was stunned. Could it be that this supreme divinity had a special taste and really wanted such a witch? Imo also raised his eyebrows and looked at Xinjuli. He did not know what Xinjuli was planning. Gong Huanyan's eyes lit up. Supreme divinity, please save Huanyan. Huanyan only wants to be your servant. Now that the array is not sealed, Huanyan cannot die. Huanyan can only say this to Venerable Yi for the sake of sealing the array. Huanyan does not really want to be his servant. Chapter 1735. Xinjuli ignored her. His sleeves fluttered as he walked forward. Would the Divine Lord not save her? Gong Huanyan was anxious. Divine Lord, as long as you save me, I'm willing to do anything for you. I don't lack anything. Then I'm willing to do anything for you. I'll go through fire and water for you. Xinjuli paused his steps. Go through fire and water? Do you know that these two things could cost you your life? Gong Huanyan paused and then answered firmly, as long as you need my life, you can take it away at any time. I won't complain. I won't regret it. Rumble. A series of thunder rumbled out of nowhere. The thunder was dull, but it rang clearly in everyone's ears. Gong Huanyan was stunned. Xinjuli said faintly, promises made to God will be witnessed. Gong Huanyan, Xinjuli did not turn around and only said to Yi Tianli, you've played enough. Let her go. His sleeves fluttered and he walked forward. Yi Tianli rubbed his nose. He was the one who made the pair of skeletal hands. He just wanted to teach Gong Huanyan a lesson. He did not expect Xinjuli to see through it without even looking at it. He waved his hand and patted the ground. Gong Huanyan was finally free. She crawled out of the ground like a groundhog. She was covered in mud and soil. She glared at Yi Tianli angrily. You're an immortal. How dare you use underhanded means to harm people? Yi Tianli flicked his sleeves. I just don't want you to disturb the Divine Lord and the Demon Master. Gong Huanyan, Yi Tianli did not want to talk nonsense with her. He flicked his fingernails and a pair of skeletal hands suddenly appeared under Gong Huanyan's feet. Gong Huanyan screamed and quickly chased after Xinjuli as if there was a ghost chasing after her. Yi Tianli could not help but feel embarrassed. He looked at Imo and asked with concern, Imo, are you okay? I'm fine. How did you fall down just now? Are you hurt? I slipped. Imo replied casually and smiled. Alright, stop asking so many questions. We're in a hurry. Let's go. He took the lead and walked forward. Yi Tianli had no choice but to follow. His gaze subconsciously fell on her back and he was slightly stunned. The blood stain on her back had disappeared and more importantly, she had changed into a new dress. She was not wearing the same dress as before. Although the style of this one was similar to the previous one, the material and color were different. Especially the texture of this one. It looked as soft as the clouds and it floated as she walked. He had never seen such a material before, but it was obviously expensive. She had just been locked in the white enchantment with the Divine Lord and had even changed her clothes. Yi Tianli felt that it was hard for him not to think in the wrong direction. He blurted out, Imo, was your back seriously injured just now? Imo's footsteps paused for a moment. He only replied with a yes and added, don't worry, it's fine now. Yi Tianli looked at her face. Her face was still a little pale, but other than that there was nothing wrong. Her back did not seem to be as stiff as before, as if she had completely recovered. Yi Tianli sighed softly, Imo, you should have told me earlier that you were injured. It was difficult for her to endure such severe pain for such a long time and to fight so many fierce battles. Chapter 1736. Imo looked up at the two people walking in front of her with a complicated expression. She recalled the scenes in the wizardry barrier. After treating her heart disease, he happily let go of her hand. She jumped up and sensed her body. Then she thanked him distantly, thank you very much. I will make up for this favor in the future. What do you want? As long as I have it, I will give it to you. Xinjuli was still sitting there. He only smiled when he heard her words. You don't have to thank me. I saved you for the sake of the big picture. Of course it is also for Nianma. She choked and finally asked the question that was stuck in her throat. Is Nianma my child? Yes. Did you resurrect him with magic? Then you raised him in the New Rock? Yes. Why? He is the Son of God. Of course I can't let him die like this. Otherwise, how can I face the Divine Lord? Then, why did you send me to the Carefree Island and let Rongyu save me? You are Nianma's mother and I hurt you. It is reasonable for me to save you. Imo felt as if there was a knot in her heart. She looked at his face again. Then why did you come to the Celestial Devil continent to steal my bride? Shinjuli looked calm. No matter what, you are Nianma's mother and used to be my woman. As long as I am still alive, I will not let you marry someone else. She could not help but sneer. So, this is the reason why you are so humble in the Imo Palace. Do you think you can stop me from marrying someone else? Even if a married couple is divorced, there are many people who divorce and remarry after having a child. That is why I fought for it. Nianma loves his biological mother. He kept saying that it was for Nianma, but Imo did not know why it sounded so harsh. She could not help but sneer again. It seems that you are sincere in coming to the Imo Palace to be my fiancé. Of course. What about Lizine? Since you want to marry me again, what are you going to do with her? If she remembered correctly, the Divine Lord and Lizine were already engaged. They had been in love for so long. She's not in the God's Demons continent, Shinjuli replied. Imo's anger surged. His reply was simply asking for a beating. How was it different from the arguments of some foreign businessmen? Those people had wives in their own countries and went to another country to marry another wife. Just because the two wives were not in the same country, it was not considered bigamy? What a trashy answer. Shinjuli, regardless of whether she is in the God's Demons continent or not, I will never agree to marry you. I already know, so I won't force you. I only hope that. Shinjuli seemed to have let go. Hope for what? After all, Nianma is your biological son. You should treat him better. I don't need you to tell me that. Before she knew that the little fellow was her biological son, she had already been unable to let him go. Moreover, now that she knew, she would not let go of the child even more. Shinjuli smiled. That's it. In fact, I have already thought about it. You and I are both stubborn. It is not suitable for us to be husband and wife. It is better to be like this. Even if we are not husband and wife, you are still Nianma's mother. If he misses you, he can look for you. I will not stop him. It was not suitable for them to be husband and wife. Yes, it was indeed not suitable for them to be husband and wife. It used to be so, and it was even more so now. Chapter 1737. He was a god and she was a devil. How could they be husband and wife? Fortunately, he realized it in time and thought it through thoroughly. A god was indeed a god. With tens of thousands of years of experience, he could think more clearly than a rookie like her. Imo took a deep breath and nodded. Divine Lord, you are indeed rational. It is good that you can think this way. However, I have something to say first. What is it? Shinjuli looked at her. His eyes were so deep that no one could tell what he was thinking. I know that Lizine is your fiancée, but she is also the murderer who killed my child. Once I have the chance, I will not let her go. I will kill her. You won't have the chance. Shinjuli answered cruelly. Once you enter the Celestial Demon continent, you can't leave. Do you think you can go back to the Tianxi continent? Imo was speechless. After she was reborn and found out that she had become the Devil Lord, her first thought was to go back to the Tianxi continent to take revenge. However, after she explored for a while, she found that the Celestial Demon continent was a place where people could not leave freely. She could not even find the space door in the air. She was really desperate and decided to seal all the memories about Ningxuema. Now that she heard Shinjuli say it, although she knew it was true, she still felt uncomfortable. She looked at him coldly. You were not reborn in this continent. Your original body floated here in the fiery golden sea. The space door to the Tianxi continent should be there, right? Since you can come, I can go. Shinjuli looked at her. Shuema, is revenge really so important to you? Nianma is still alive. You can still be with him for a long time in the future. Why do you want to take the risk for someone irrelevant? There is indeed a space door there, but it has been destroyed because of a mistake. Now even I can't go back, let alone you. When he called her Shuema, her heart trembled slightly. She looked at him with a cold gaze. You're a god. You can let bygones be bygones when others kill your child. I'm a demon and demons are vengeful. I can't do that. Although what he said was true, his intention to protect Lizine was too obvious. She couldn't help but get angry and argue with him. Shinjuli pursed his lips and lightly said, she has already received the punishment she deserves. What punishment? Imo asked. What do you think? Shinjuli raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Haven't you already punished her? IMO, the fire in her heart burned even brighter. At that time she had indeed used cruel means to gouge out Lizine's eyes and cut off her hand. She had even stabbed her a few times in the stomach. However, she had not taken her life. With Shinjuli's medical skills, he should be able to cure her quickly. That woman might not even have a scar. Perhaps Shinjuli had even compensated the woman by promising her a lot of conditions. When she went to the Sun Moon clan, the disciples said that Lizine was with the great emperor. She couldn't find her no matter how hard she tried. She couldn't force the woman to come out even when she threatened to kill herself. Moreover, he still didn't give her an explanation for this matter. That's right. That woman is his fiancée. She might even be married now. He should protect her. In his heart, he probably thought that after he got Nianma back, the woman would be punished again because of this. That was the end of the matter. Chapter 1738. What about her? Who was going to pay for the pain she had suffered in the past? Her gaze fell on Shinjuli, who was also quietly looking at her with a gentle gaze. He sat there quietly, his light blue robe half open, revealing his snow-white inner robe. He looked a little disheveled, but he was extremely sexy. Thinking about how she was lying in his embrace just now, she couldn't tell if she was angry or something else. Shinjuli slowly said, Shuama, if you're still unhappy, we can still get married after this. I'll make it up to you on her behalf. In your dreams. Amo's anger was about to erupt. Make it up to her? Haha, who was he to make it up to that woman? Shinjuli lowered his eyes and said indifferently, if that's the case, then let's put this matter aside. You will make me think that you still love me. Amo's impression of him had changed because he had saved her this time, but now that she heard what he said, her anger rose again, and she was very unhappy with him. She wanted to stab him with a knife. Supreme Divinity, narcissism is an illness, you have to treat it. I've always been like this. Shuama, it's not your first day knowing me, right? Imo sneered, of course. She knew that he had the habit of liking the new and disliking the old. No matter how rare something was, once he had enough of it, he would throw it away like a pair of worn-out clogs. At this point, they were simply not on the same page. Imo didn't want to spend a moment with him, so she turned around to break the barrier and run out. Unexpectedly, he suddenly reached out and pulled her. His movements were as fast as lightning, and she was caught off guard, so she fell into his arms and threw herself on top of him. The familiar scent rushed into her nose again, but this time, Imo didn't feel any warmth, but only anger. She slapped him. What are you doing? This time her slap didn't hit him, but her wrist was easily caught by him. Then he used a little more strength and imprisoned her in his arms. Amo, I think you should seriously consider my suggestion. Let's get married. He hugged her very tightly. It was so tight that it almost hurt her waist. In your dreams? Shinjuli, you can go to hell now. Amo was so angry that he spoke without thinking. He struggled a few more times. She had just recovered from her heart disease and her magic power had not recovered yet, so she was no match for him. Will you be sad if I die? Shinjuli was still holding her in his arms. His tone was half serious and half joking. No. I will beat the gongs and drums to celebrate. Sigh, that's really sad. Shinjuli sighed and finally let go of her. Imo immediately jumped away and stayed far away from him. She deeply felt that Shinjuli seemed to be a little crazy today. She couldn't help but size him up again. She saw him sitting there with a faint smile on his face. His eyes were as deep and unfathomable as before, making it impossible for her to guess his true emotions. Forget it, she was too lazy to guess. This person never acted according to common sense, and she never seemed to be able to see through him. Now she didn't want to guess at all. Your magic power hasn't recovered yet. If you go out, you will be easily eroded by the purple evil spirit here. First, sit down and rest for a while. The big picture is more important. Shinjuli was serious. Imo secretly took a breath and calmed down. I know the big picture is more important. Didn't you save me just now for the big picture? Yes, Imo is very smart. You really understand. Shinjuli praised her. Chapter 1739. Well, Imo is very smart. You really understand. Shinjuli praised her. So, I don't have to repay you for saving me this time? No need. Shinjuli was very open-minded. I didn't do it for you. He slightly looked down and then looked up again. However, I still want to ask you to do one thing for me. What is it? Since I don't owe you anything, I may not agree. After this matter, I will be in isolation for a period of time. Please take care of Nianma. Isolation? Imo already knew that this person was often in isolation, so she did not suspect anything. When she heard his request, she smiled. He is my son. Of course I will take care of him. You don't have to ask me for this. Shinjuli gently sighed. That's good. Imo looked at him and tried to hold back. She could not help but ask, how long will you be in isolation? Shinjuli supported his chin with one hand and looked at her with a smile. What is the purpose of this question? Shinjuli, do you think that everyone is like you? Do you think that you have a purpose for asking a question? Imo felt that today's Shinjuli was very difficult to communicate with. If this is your secret, then you don't have to say it. Pretend that I didn't ask. This is hard to say. Sealing this main array consumes a lot of my magic power. I can't say for sure if I will be in isolation for a few thousand years. Imo was speechless. Thousands of years. So long? Was he serious or was he joking? She did not look well. Shinjuli looked at her. His eyes were slightly gloomy, but he smiled. Imo, you won't miss me, right? Who would miss you? I am afraid that if you are in isolation for a long time, Nianma will ask me for his biological father. If you don't come out for a long time, he might think that you are dead. Imo paused and did not want to continue. She changed the topic. When you come out, he might not recognize you. You should give me a specific date. The child asks, I can tell him. Shinjuli supported his chin and thought for a moment. 1,000 years. The promise of 1,000 years. His seclusion this time was unusually long. Imo didn't know what to feel, so he didn't say anything for a while. Shinjuli looked at her with a smile. He was smiling a lot today. Imo, have you missed me a lot in these 1,000 years? If you miss me, I can come out a few years earlier. You think too much. Imo felt that his smile today was particularly dazzling, giving her the urge to scratch it off his face. She added fiercely, it's better if you go into seclusion for a few more years. My son and I can spend a few more years together. As she spoke, her magic power finally recovered. She stood up and said, all right, let's stop talking nonsense. It's more important to seal this formation as soon as possible. Shinjuli looked at her from behind. There seemed to be thousands of emotions surging in his eyes, but he firmly suppressed them. Seeing that she was about to lift her sleeve to break the white barrier, he suddenly stood up and hugged her from behind. Imo was caught off guard. Her body stiffened and she subconsciously wanted to push him away. Hey, what are you doing? This bastard took advantage of his stronger kung fu to take advantage of her frequently. She was about to use a spell to push him away, but he had automatically let go of her and took a step back. He smiled and said, it's nothing. The next time we meet again will be 1,000 years later. This is my farewell ceremony. I want you to remember me for 1,000 years because of this hug. Imo was simply angered to death by him. I will not remember you for 1,000 years. If you come out after 1,000 years, I will forget who you are. Chapter 1740. I won't remember you for 1,000 years. If you come out after 1,000 years, I'll forget who you are. Shinjuli, I have nothing to do with you anymore. It doesn't matter if I remember you or not. The one you should hug the most is your son. It's important that he remembers you. Shinjuli smiled, we're connected by blood. You won't forget me. Alright, it's almost time. Let's go out. No matter how reluctant he was, he had to leave. No matter how sad he was, he didn't want her to be sad. She hated him. Even if she forgot him, it was better than living a life worse than death. Shuma, I'm sorry. I love you. I only hope that you can live well. You can live well when I'm not around. He raised his hand and broke the enchantment. Shinjuli walked in front in a light blue robe. He never looked back. Gong Huanyan was afraid that Yi Tianli would plot against her again. She followed closely behind Shinjuli. Looking at the tall god in front of her, she couldn't wait to run forward and hold his hand. When she entered the big array and couldn't see anything, she was scared. Shinjuli threw a belt to her for her to hold. When he could see his surroundings clearly, the belt burned on its own, leaving not even a piece of cloth behind. When the partners of other teams fought, they had their backs against each other. However, she didn't have to lean against him at all. She had been partners with him for a long time, but she only touched a small piece of belt that he threw over. Soon they arrived at the 8th seal. Imo and Yi Tianli stood in their respective positions. Listen to my orders later. Don't hesitate. At this time, Shinjuli had returned to his usual appearance. His expression was indifferent and calm. "I don't need your orders," Imo said. Her team and Shinjuli's communication talisman was with her. Shinjuli nodded slightly. His eyes turned to her and Yi Tianli. He paused slightly on Imo and quickly moved away. He turned around and left. Imo watched the two of them leave. He didn't know why, but he felt a little flustered. His fingers clenched tightly in his sleeves. Imo. Yi Tianli had to call her a few times before she heard him. "Imo, are you not feeling well?" Yi Tianli could not help but ask. Imo did not look well. Imo shook her head. She felt very comfortable right now and didn't feel any discomfort. She also knew that this was a critical moment for the seal, and she could not afford to be distracted. She took a light breath and looked at the formation eye in front of her. At this moment, the formation eye was suddenly emitting purple smoke, and the rising purple smoke pillar shot straight into the sky. Later, when Shinjuli said to start, she and Yi Tianli would each use a spell to drive the turntable under their feet. They would make the turntable turn 180 degrees to seal the place where the purple smoke was coming out. The turntable under his feet looked like it was made of bronze, and there were all sorts of symbols on it. From time to time, a faint light would shoot out and shoot into the purple smoke, causing the purple smoke to stop for a moment. Because Imo came from the other 7 formation eyes, she was very familiar with this turntable. However, this 8th one was indeed much bigger than the other 7. It was much more difficult to drive it. It really needed an expert like her to drive it. She and Yi Tianli were standing at the position of the yin and yang 8 trigrams. One yin and one yang complementing each other. The one she was standing on was the Demon Clan spell, while the one Yi Tianli was standing on was the Immortal Clan spell. This turntable could only be driven by one immortal and one demon. Everything was exactly as Shinjuli said. Chapter 1741. This array was set up by those immortals and demons 50,000 years ago. She stood on top of it and felt an ancient aura coming from it. She was in a trance. She seemed to see a man and a woman standing opposite each other. She could not see their faces clearly. She could only vaguely see the woman smiling and saying something. Suddenly she rushed towards the center of the array and jumped down. The man rushed forward but only managed to grab the corner of her clothes. The moment he grabbed it, the corner of her clothes turned into ashes. Imo? Yi Tianli's call brought her back to her senses. Imo shuddered and regained her senses. She looked around again. Where was the man and woman? Were her eyes playing tricks on her? Or was it the illusion of the man and woman who sealed the array here 50,000 years ago? "Did you see anything just now?" she asked Yi Tianli. Yi Tianli shook his head. "I didn't see anything." "Imo, are you feeling unwell? Your mental state is not right." "I'm fine. Maybe there's something strange about this array that made me hallucinate." Imo rubbed her eyebrows. "This purple smoke has a hallucinogenic effect. Try to calm down," Yi Tianli said. No matter how good a demon's cultivation method was, it was not as good as a celestial's cultivation method. At the very least, in terms of concentration, a demon was not as good as a celestial. Yi Tianli was about to teach her a cultivation method from the celestial world that could stabilize her mind. Unexpectedly, Imo lowered her eyes and made a finger gesture. Yi Tianli's eyes widened. Imo's finger gesture was very authentic. It was even better than the cultivation method from the celestial world. "You." He blurted out a word. Imo looked up. "What about me?" Seeing him staring at her finger, she looked at it too. Her expression changed slightly. She had unknowingly used the meditation finger gesture that Shinjuli had taught her. This finger gesture was taught to her by Shinjuli when she was harassed by the little loli in her body. Now that her memory was restored, she had unknowingly used this skill. She was a little anxious. Without batting an eyelid, she changed her Devil Clan's finger technique and said indifferently, "Listen to his command." There was a huge golden and red turntable. There were countless runes on the turntable. Not far in front of the turntable, there was a huge door made of an unknown material. The door was also very tall. Unlike the other doors, it was embedded in the ground. There seemed to be a whistling sound coming from the other side of the door, as if there was a huge beast squatting behind the door, eyeing them covetously. Fear. Extreme fear. An atmosphere of extreme fear permeated through the door, causing one's heartstrings to tremble uncontrollably. Before Gong Huanyin could reach the turntable, she was already suffocated by the fear. Her legs trembled as if she was playing a pipa. If not for Shinjuli standing in front of her like a protective umbrella, she would have collapsed. Supreme Divinity. Supreme Divinity. Gong Huanyan's voice was trembling. She couldn't help but pull Shinjuli's sleeve. Will there be monsters here? She grabbed nothing but air. Then she screamed as her body flew up and landed in one of the pits on the red wheel. She stood still trembling. She looked up at the Supreme Divinity who was standing at the junction of the golden and red turntable. She opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Shouldn't he be standing in the groove of the golden turntable? Why was he standing in the middle? Shinjuli looked down at her. His eyes were as deep as the sea, but there was no emotion. Chapter 1742. He was looking at her from the point of view of a god. The invisible pressure of a god made Gong Huanyan's heart tremble. She knelt down on the ground. Gong Huanyan, do you know why I chose you? Shinjuli said slowly. What? Gong Huanyan had a bad feeling. Among the 4 guardians of Mo Palace, you are the most useless and have the worst character. I don't want someone like you to stay by her side. Gong Huanyan was speechless. Shinjuli's words were too direct. Her face turned red, but she didn't know how to reply. It's not scary to be timid, but a bad character can't be changed. I can't let any danger be by her side. Do you understand? Gong Huanyan's pretty face turned pale. I don't mean any harm. In the future, I will follow Divine Lord and listen to Divine Lord's teachings at all times. I will do whatever Divine Lord asks me to do. If Divine Lord has the intention to marry the Devil Lord, I am willing to be your servant. Shinjuli didn't care about what she said. He said lightly, I only asked you to follow me for one purpose. What purpose? I need a female devil as a sacrifice to open this roulette, so I chose you. Gong Huanyan's face changed. Sacrifice? What sacrifice? Shinjuli didn't say anything. He just closed his eyes slightly and chanted a spell. A faint white talisman flashed from his body and flew toward Gong Huanyan. Gong Huanyan knew something was wrong. She wanted to run away, but her feet seemed to be stuck. She couldn't move at all. She watched the white talisman coming toward her. Then she felt as if something was melting beneath her feet, and she was sinking inch by inch into the groove. Hot. Extremely hot. The temperature of the place where she fell was very high. She panicked and tried to condense the water vapor under her feet, but it was useless. At most, she could only turn the boiling oil under her feet into boiling water. Seeing that half of her body had sunk in, Gong Huanyan shouted desperately, Divine Lord, you can't treat me like this. Huanyan didn't do anything wrong. Please spare me. Gong Huanyan, you once swore that you would go through water and tread on fire for me. Now is the time for you to go through fire and water. Shinjuli finally opened his mouth and looked coldly at Gong Huanyan. No. I regret it. I don't want to die. I beg you, let me go. Gong Huanyan cried. There must be a demoness sacrificing herself in this place in order to completely seal this Zisha. Gong Huanyan, your death will not be in vain. No? Why should I sacrifice myself? The other witches could do it too. Supreme Divinity, please forgive me for my loyalty to you. I'll recruit more witches for you. It's too late, Shinjuli said. No, there's still time. Huanyan can change places with Yuang. Let her be the sacrifice. Gong Huanyan started to speak without thinking. I heard that Gong Yuang saved your life 3 times. You still schemed against her? Gong Huanyan. She didn't expect this Supreme Divinity to know so much about her. At this time, her heart was filled with endless regret. But it was too late to regret. When her regret and fear reached the extreme, she exploded. Her eyes emitted blue light and her body suddenly surged with layers of blue light. That was the ice crystal magic light. Chapter 1743. When her regret and fear reached the extreme, she exploded. Her eyes emitted blue light, and layers of blue light suddenly gushed out from her body. That was the ice crystal devil light. After the devil light was emitted, everything under her feet began to freeze, and layers of ice spread outwards. Her position as the Devil Clan's guardian was not obtained out of thin air. She still had some practical skills. This ice crystal devil light was her specialty, which could instantly turn the entire space into water. She wanted to use this technique to escape completely with the water escape technique. The reason why Shinjuli talked so much nonsense with her was that he was waiting for her to use this trick. When the ice spread to his feet, he suddenly flicked his finger at Gong Huanyan. Gong Huanyan screamed. Suddenly, there was nothing under her feet and she fell into the groove. Below her was rolling lava-like things. She struggled in it for a while, popped her head out once and then disappeared completely. There was a faint red light flashing in that direction. That was the sole light of the Devil Clan. At the same time, Shinjuli drove the turntable under his feet. At the same time, he took out the prepared voice-transmitting talisman, closed his eyes slightly and gave the final order, "Start." Her heart was flustered and she felt as if she was about to lose something, causing her heart to tighten. Amo's eyes were fixed on the voice-transmitting talisman. She did not know if she wanted him to start earlier or later. She suddenly had an idea to throw away the voice-transmitting talisman and then run to the central array to find him. But as soon as this idea rushed out, it was pushed back into her mind. If she did that, she would be crazy. She forced herself to take a deep breath, then another to stabilize her mind. Suddenly, she realized that she still had a very important question to ask him. For example, what was the grudge between them 50,000 years ago? He kept talking about what happened 50,000 years ago. It was obvious that he had recovered his memory, but she did not. This was too unfair. As soon as this idea came out, it burned in her heart like a fire. She finally found a legitimate reason to look for him. In a fit of anger, she turned around and wanted to jump down from where she was standing. Fortunately, Yi Qianli had been paying attention to her. Seeing this, he grabbed her. "Imo, where are you going?" Imo subconsciously said, "I still have something to ask him." Yi Qianli almost rubbed his forehead. "Imo, as the Supreme Divinity said, you can't come back down once you're in this place. If you have any questions for him, you can wait until the seal is complete. You'll have plenty of time to ask him, right?" Imo had been hot-blooded just now, which was why he had almost disregarded the bigger picture and acted rashly. Now that he had regained his senses, he stood in place. "What's wrong with me today?" Shinjuli was a little crazy today and it also made him a little crazy? Even if he wanted to go into seclusion, he would have to wait until he came out, right? If he had any questions, he could ask him after this matter was over. There was no need to rush. As soon as she stood still, the special sound-transmitting talisman in her hand lit up. She steeled her heart and accepted the call. Shinjuli's calm and steady voice came from it. "Begin." Everything had been agreed upon in advance. Even the position and the amount of force to be used had been clearly stated. Everything had been explained clearly. So, under Shinjuli's command, the 8 groups each started their own roulette. A strange sound came from under their feet. Everyone in the 8 groups used all their strength. Chapter 1744. Imo was no exception. She used her magical power and drove the turntable under her feet with Yi Qianli. The turntable seemed to be carrying a heavy object, and it spun slowly inch by inch. Although the 8 groups were in 8 directions, the speed of the turntable was extremely coordinated, and the 8 turntables spun at the same frequency. It was very tiring to spin. Before the turntable was half turned, Yi Qianli's forehead was sweating and his legs were sore. He looked at Imo again. She was pursing her lips all the time. Except that her face was a little pale, there was nothing wrong with her. On the main turntable in the center, Shinjuli had already sat down with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes and made gestures. Countless light red lights were emitted from his body. Combined with the light blue ice crystals made by Gong Huanyin, they intertwined around the main turntable, and soon formed a closed space like a lotus bud. Outside the space, there were red lotuses blooming one after another. As the turntable under his feet moved inch by inch, the gate embedded in the ground not far from the turntable slowly opened a gap. There seemed to be all kinds of cries and howls from the gap. Many light red shadows rushed out from the gate, but they directly hit the lotus bud, set by Shinjuli, and then attached to it as if there was something delicious on it. They desperately sucked it, shaking their heads and wagging their tails as they drilled into the bud. The gap of the gate was getting bigger and bigger and more light red shadows flew out. In a moment, the outer circle of the lotus bud had been occupied by the light red shadows, and it was almost impossible to see the original shape. In the bud, Shinjuli's face was getting paler and paler. The lotus bud he set was condensed by his divine power and divine blood. For those red shadows, it was a delicacy that they could not throw away. Those purple fiends that were originally erupting outwards also seemed to have smelled something delicious. Suddenly, they turned back like huge dragons and rushed towards this lotus bud. The lotus bud was delicious to those red shadows, and the red shadows were delicious to the purple evil. The purple evil turned back and directly rolled the lotus bud, wanting to swallow it together. Obviously it could not swallow it, but like those red shadows, once it bit it, it could not let go. As the golden-red turntable turned 180 degrees, the door opened completely. Suddenly there was an earth-shattering sound between heaven and earth. The lotus bud suddenly broke away from the turntable and rolled toward the door. Naturally, Zisha also followed it and rolled away. Imo and Yi Tianli had just turned the roulette to 180 degrees when they heard an earth-shattering sound. The space above their heads suddenly cracked open, and their bodies involuntarily bounced upwards, rushing directly towards the crack. Between heaven and earth, rumbling sounds could be heard incessantly. The mountain collapsed. Imo was sent flying into the sky by that inexplicable force. The force was too great, so great that she couldn't resist it. By the time she had completely stabilized her body, she was already in mid-air. The people from the other 7 groups also shot up one after another. All of them were still in shock as they looked down. Then everyone held their breaths. The entire mountain was collapsing. All the purple specters in the 8 places where the purple specters emerged were rapidly retreating, like a whale sucking in a river. At the very center it was also collapsing, revealing a huge hole. All the purple fiend was gathering in that huge hole and drilling into it. The giant cave was like an enormous black hole, sucking in everything around it. Purple evil, huge rocks, trees. Chapter 1745. Those things flew in crazily and then disappeared. Everything rolled into the black hole. It was a spectacular scene. The original mountain peak had disappeared, and the original landscape had undergone an earth-shattering change, causing everyone present to be dumbfounded. The purple haze that was spreading outside quickly disappeared and the sky slowly became clear again. Imo stood there. After she glanced down, her eyes started to wander around. Her eyes quickly scanned the people around her, and then her heart sank inch by inch. Shuilan, Heaven's Sovereign, the 4 guardians of the demon clan, the state preceptor of the human realm, Yi Tianli, the celestial generals, everyone from the 8 sealed groups had ascended. Not a single one of them was missing. But what about Xinjiuli? What about Gong Huanyan? Why didn't his group come up? Why didn't he come up? The collapsed ground was where he was. Could it be that he didn't have time to escape? Was he sucked into the black hole? Impossible. They were all involuntarily ejected. It didn't make sense that he wasn't ejected too. His martial arts were so high. It was impossible that he didn't have any way to defend himself. If they could come out, it didn't make sense that he couldn't. Or maybe he came out early and didn't want to see her again, so he left early? What about Gong Huanyan? Did he leave with her too? This didn't seem like his style. Her gaze anxiously swept across everyone's faces. Not a single one of the people from the 3 realms who had rushed over to save the situation had left. Everyone stood in the air, looking at the collapsed ground, watching this rare spectacle. Everyone was here except for him and Gong Huanyan. Momo? Shuilan looked for Imo first. He glanced down and fixed his eyes on her. Then he rushed over. Are you okay? You don't look good. Shuilan, did you see the divine, supreme divinity come up? Imo asked immediately. Shuilan shook his head. No, I came up later than you. The 8 groups of people were ejected one after another. It seemed that Imo's group was the first to be ejected. Demon Lord, your group is the first to arrive, a minor immortal beside him replied. Imo's gaze immediately landed on Xiao Xian. You've been watching all this time? Yes, Demon Lord. Ever since you entered, we have been guarding the perimeter. The Supreme Divinity has ordered that before this place is sealed, not even a fly can be let out. Then did you see the Divine Lord's group come up? The immortal shook his head and replied straightforwardly, No, Demon Master. This immortal said that your group was the first to arrive. Hidden in his sleeves, Imo clenched his fists. He thought to himself, perhaps this Xiao Xian's skills are too shallow, so she didn't notice it. Thus, she continued to ask a few more people, those from the celestial realm, those from the devil realm, those from the demon realm. In the end, she had asked all the people who had been guarding outside, but none of them had seen Xinjiuli come out. Imo's heart grew heavier and heavier, but his legs grew weaker and weaker. Shuilan had been by her side the whole time. He seemed to be saying something to her, but she didn't hear anything. There were only a few scenes in his mind. Will you be sad if I die? No. I will celebrate with gongs and drums. After this is over, I will be in isolation for a period of time. I will need you to take care of Nianma. This is hard to say. Sealing this main array will consume a lot of my power. I can't say for sure if I will be in isolation for a few thousand years. Chapter 1746. Mo, you won't miss me, right? It's nothing. The next time we meet it will be 1,000 years later. This is my farewell ceremony. I want you to remember me for 1,000 years because of this hug. She stared at the big black hole that was still swallowing everything. A thought came to her mind. Did he pay the price of his life for this seal? Is he dead? Farewell ceremony? That was his farewell ceremony? He left just like that. When this thought came to her mind, her heart fell into an abyss. She couldn't help but put her hand on her chest. At that moment, it was as if the pain came again. There was a sweet taste in her throat, as if his blood was surging in her throat. How could she not know that when her heart was at its most painful, he was stuffing his finger into her mouth, and she was sucking his blood? When he waved his hand to break the wizardry barrier, she saw with her own eyes the deep teeth marks on his finger. She felt hot and cold at the same time. Her head was also dizzy. Since she regained her memory, she knew that she still hated him. She hated him for locking her up because of Wuxia. She hated him for indiscriminately giving her a slap. She hated him for taking another woman away and leaving her behind. She hated him for always protecting that woman and letting her experience the tribulation and turn into ashes. Layers upon layers of hatred piled up and formed a knot in her heart that wouldn't go away. While she hated him, she also sadly found out that she still loved him. She never knew that there would be a day when she would love someone to this extent. Even if her heart was filled with hatred, she still cared about him. Especially when he hugged her in his arms, she was still shamelessly greedy for his smell and the warmth of his embrace. However, with the accumulation of hatred, she couldn't say anything to admit defeat. She said those words to him, not to hurt him, but to remind herself. Shui Yilan had been following her. He saw her staring at the black hole with a pale face. He couldn't help but worry. Momo? He's dead, isn't he? Mo suddenly asked softly. Shui Yilan choked. He also looked at the black hole. In such a situation, even Shinjuli might not be able to escape, right? But that person was a god. How could he die? Momo, he might not be dead. He's a god. Then why didn't he come up? Everyone else has already come up. Why isn't he coming up? Mo seemed to be asking him, but at the same time, it also seemed like he was asking himself. Shui Yilan couldn't answer her question. Mo's expression was so empty that Shui Yilan had a bad premonition. He reached out to pull her. Momo? Mo's bright red figure was already falling into the black hole like a meteor. She only left one sentence in the air. I'm going down to take a look. Momo. Shui Yilan's complexion changed greatly. He shouted and subconsciously chased after him. Momo. Danger. Come back. The black hole had the power to swallow everything. Even though they were far away, they could still feel the terrifying suction force of the black hole. If Mo rushed down, she might not be able to come up. However, how could Shui Yilan's speed compare to Mo's? He watched as her body fell into the black hole along with the rolling boulders and trees. He didn't even catch a corner of her clothes. Chapter 1747. His blood rushed to his head and he wanted to jump down as well. However, he was held back by his subordinates. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. You can't. Shui Yilan had used up a lot of demonic energy to activate the seal. His body was held back by his 4 subordinates and he could not rush down. More demons surrounded him. These people pulled at his arms and legs, desperately trying to drag him away from this terrifying area. What a joke. It wasn't easy for their demon emperor to come back. It wasn't easy for the demon race to have some good days. How could the demon race allow anything to happen to their demon emperor? Jumping in there was simply courting death. As for the demon race's subordinates, they naturally did not want their demon lord to jump in. However, Mo's movements were too fast. Furthermore, the demon race had contributed a lot this time. 4 male and 4 female demon protectors had all moved out. Now they were half dead. By the time they reacted and wanted to chase after him, Mo's figure had already disappeared into the black hole. The supreme god did not come up and the demon lord suddenly rushed down. Everyone was stunned. Even the Sky Emperor had a complicated expression. The other people in the celestial realm also looked at each other. Yi Qianli wanted to go down and take a look but was held back by the Sky Emperor. You can't go to that place. What? That is the reincarnation death ground. No one can come out after going in. The Sky Emperor was quite knowledgeable. He stood there for a moment and saw the clues. Yi Qianli's expression changed. Then what about the Supreme God and the Demon Lord? Could it be that they could not come up? The Sky Emperor looked down and sighed softly. I only hope that they can be blessed. Shui Yilan also heard the Sky Emperor's words from afar. His face was pale as he looked down. His heart seemed to be rolling like the waves of the sea. 3 lives. After 3 lives, no matter who she was reborn as, she still loved Xinjiuli. Shui Yimo was also like this. In order to resurrect Xinjiuli, she was willing to commit suicide in a different world, suffering the torment of a heavenly calamity star for all eternity. It was even more so for Ning Xuema. Even though he had imprisoned her for 10 years, he still couldn't win her heart. The one she liked and loved was still Xinjiuli. Her happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy had always been related to Xinjiuli. Amo still loved Xinjiuli. Before they entered the Purple Demon Array, he had seen her stare blankly in the direction of Xinjiuli a few times when they were roasting game below. Perhaps she didn't realize it herself, or perhaps she hid her emotions very well, but how could Shui Yilan, who had been paying attention to her, not notice it? She was the person he loved with his life, but her happiness and anger had nothing to do with him. At most, she treated him as a friend. No matter how much effort he put in, it would still be the same. He stood in the air in a daze. The demons around him were eyeing him covetously, ready to pounce on him at any time. Shui Yilan's heart was filled with sorrow, and a bitter smile appeared on his face. Momo, even if she died, she probably wouldn't want me to accompany her, right? The people around him suddenly shouted in a low voice, "The black hole is gone." Shui Yilan's heart sank. He looked down and saw that the black hole had indeed disappeared. The flying dust below almost covered the sky. When the dust settled, the black hole was indeed gone, and an extremely tall mountain appeared in its place. The mountain was tall and majestic, and it was actually no different from before. The tall trees on the mountain peak covered the sky. Chapter 1748. The mountain peak was towering and looked exactly the same as before. The tall trees on the mountain peak covered the sky and the sun. Apes and birds were chirping. It was a peaceful atmosphere. It was as if the landslide was just a nightmare. When they woke up from the nightmare, everything would be back to normal. Everyone stood in the sky, stunned. After the dust settled, some of the bolder ones couldn't help but fly down to check. Shui Yilan also staggered and flew down. After a long while, he leaned against a big tree with a pale face. The place where he and Imo roasted game was still there. He could even find a few pieces of burned wood and the skin of the rabbit. But the purple smoke had disappeared. The array that was once exposed also disappeared. Of course, the entrance of the array was also gone. The original entrance was a big rock as high as a small hill. Shui Yilan didn't give up. He summoned all of his subordinates to move the boulder away. After these demons used all of their strength to move the boulder away with great difficulty, what appeared in front of them was not the entrance, but yet another boulder. He moved several big rocks in succession, but found that the inside was solid. It looked like the soil and stones hadn't been moved for thousands of years. Obviously there was no entrance here. Or it could be said that the original entrance to the formation was simply an illusion and did not truly exist in this mountain. Momo. Shui Yilan lost all his strength. He slowly sat down and leaned against a big rock. He couldn't get up anymore. Momo, you don't even want your own child for that person? The power of the purple evil spirit was extremely amazing. The rolling purple evil spirit wrapped everything that could be wrapped into a tornado and flew into the big hole. As soon as Imo got close to the big hole, she was directly swept into the purple evil tornado. Broken trees, thousands of tons of big rocks. They all rotated around her with the purple evil spirit. The purple evil spirit seemed to have the power to destroy everything. Those big trees, big rocks, and other things turned into dust after rolling in the purple evil tornado for a while. If Imo didn't have a protective enchantment around her, she would have been melted by the purple evil spirit. The current Zisha was different from the Zisha when she first entered the formation. The previous Zisha's destructive power was not so great. But now, this Zisha destroyed everything it saw. Imo had no doubt that even if a big iron lump was involved, it would also be destroyed by this Zisha. He was directly reduced to ashes. She didn't turn into ashes. At the very least she was still whole. Even her clothes weren't torn. But she felt pain. He felt a burning pain all over his body. More importantly, she felt a repulsive force in it. Everything else was involuntarily flying inwards, but she felt her body being forcefully pushed outwards, as if it wanted to send her back to the outside world. The fierce wind blew around her, but she used all her strength to move forward into the depths of the black hole. She wanted to go in and take a look. She must go in and take a look. Xinjiuli, if you don't come out, I'll come in. I want to see what you're up to. Even if you're dead, I still have to find your corpse. If he was alive, he wanted to see the person. If he was dead, he wanted to see the corpse. I don't want to spend the rest of my life hugging this stuffy gourd. I don't want to wait 1,000 years just to see if you're dead or alive. I want to know if you're alive or dead. She didn't know when the tears flowed out, but they were burned dry by the wind in an instant. Chapter 1749. She pursed her lips tightly and no longer thought about who had wronged who in the past. There was only one thought in her mind. She wanted to see him even if it meant seeing a corpse. She was like a boat going against the current in this purple smoke, and it was extremely difficult to move forward. It was dark in front of her and she couldn't see anything clearly. It was as if she was leading to hell. If she was a little timid, she would have to desperately turn back even if it was smooth sailing, not to mention the difficulty of moving forward. Fortunately, her skills were not bad and she had a kind of courage to fight. As long as she made up her mind, even if there was a mountain of knives and a sea of fire in front of her, she would rush forward without blinking. She didn't know how long she had been moving forward. Perhaps it wasn't very long, but in the heart of an impatient person, 1 second was like a century. Bang! She didn't know what she had bumped into, but she was a little dizzy and her forehead was almost bulging. Since she had followed the purple evil spirit to the depths of the underground, because the things that were wrapped in it had been melted by the purple evil spirit, she hadn't encountered anything other than the whistling wind around her. Now that she had suddenly bumped into this, she couldn't help but reach out to touch it. However, she touched something slippery. That thing squeaked when she touched it, giving her a fright. She was the Devil Master, so her skills were naturally not small. Even in the dark space, she could see things as if she was wearing night vision goggles. She glanced at that thing and then she had goosebumps. It was a ghost with a physical body. Its physical body was not flesh, but condensed by dark purple gas. It was like water, and the cold air penetrated directly into people's bones. The ghost's mouth was tightly biting the thing in front of it, and it looked like it wouldn't let go even if it died. There were countless ghosts attached to the thing that was bitten, so people couldn't see the specific appearance of this thing. She could only faintly feel that this thing seemed to be slowly rolling forward. The ghosts squeaked, but they were unwilling to let go. Imo smelled a familiar smell from that thing, and her heart beat wildly. She didn't care about anything else and she grabbed a few ghosts and pulled with all her might. Finally, they were pulled away from the thing. Those ghosts were naturally unconvinced. They turned around and turned to bite her. Imo narrowed her eyes. She was the Devil Master and these ghosts still wanted to bite her? Imo's hand trembled and a red light flashed, turning the spirits into nothingness. Because there were a few ghosts missing, Imo squeezed in before the other ghosts rushed over to fill the gap. Then she finally saw him. The moment she saw him clearly, her head buzzed. His blood rushed to his head. He sat upright inside like a Buddha, his hands forming a seal. Drops of blood appeared on his fingertips, condensing into a line of blood that flew directly above his head. And there, the heavenly path sword was floating and spinning in circles, forming the shape of a lotus. It shone brightly, but this lotus was blood red, and it was the kind that bloomed and withered. As the saying goes, flowers bloom in an instant, flowers fall in an instant. Blood-red petals floated down from above and danced around his body, forming a flower canopy. It looked both strange and beautiful. Around the flower canopy, there were 8 strange-looking purple monsters. These monsters looked indescribably strange. Although they had noses and eyes, they were not where they should be. For example, some had noses above their eyes and some had a claw sticking out of their mouths holding an eyeball and turning it around. Chapter 1750. It was simply a replica of the alien monsters in the sci-fi horror movies she had seen in her previous life. Or rather, it was even more disgusting and surprising than those monsters. There were 8 of these monsters and they surrounded the flower barrier in 8 directions. Their long fangs pierced the flower barrier, and they tore and bit the flower barrier crazily. Blood seeped out from Shinjioli's fluttering blue clothes, but he remained motionless like a mountain. His fingers moved even faster and faster. The 8 evils of chaos. Imo didn't know why, but these 4 words flashed through her mind. Her eyes stared at Shinjioli's body. She knew that those petals were transformed from his divine blood, and the 8 monsters were actually gnawing on his flesh. His face was already as pale as a sheet of paper, but the expression on his face was cold and indifferent. It was just like what she had often seen, high and mighty, untainted by even a speck of dust. A true god, as if he was not going to die but just an ordinary meditation. When she was still an ordinary person, she felt that Shinjuli was like a god in the 9 levels of heaven. He was immortal, emotionless and desireless. She wanted to tear him down from his pedestal. It turned out that he was really a god, and an ancient one at that, the only god in the world. But she was a demon, an ancient demon. Even she herself couldn't remember the origin of the demon. She was a demon, but she was different from ordinary demons. She was the only demon in the world who could go against him. To think that 2 completely unrelated people would actually have such a deep relationship and actually fall in love with each other. This was truly a miracle. Imo looked at him from the outside. Just by looking at him like this, her restless heart strangely calmed down. Her eyes fell on the monsters. The 8 evils of chaos, formed by countless evil thoughts and resentment when heaven and earth were first formed. They liked to eat demon blood and were immortal. They could be sealed with demon blood. When they sensed that heaven and earth were not in harmony, they would come into being and control the purple evil to destroy heaven and earth. They could eat everything in the world. When the purple evil appeared, heaven and earth would end. Imo clutched the lotus-like enchantment tightly and stared at him who was meditating inside the enchantment. Inexplicable words emerged endlessly in her mind. She didn't know where these words came from. They seemed to have been engraved in her mind a long time ago, but they had been sealed away by the vicissitudes of time and now floated out again. If this was true, then she should be the one being devoured by the 8 evils of chaos. Not him. The lotus bud enchantment was moving slowly. Following the direction of the movement, she saw the open door. Was he sitting here waiting for the 8 vicious beasts to eat him clean and then roll into this door to seal the 8 vicious beasts again? It turned out that this was Zisha's Tao of sealing. The Zisha was still desperately circling around the lotus bud. Because of the dead souls on the lotus bud, once the Zisha bit the lotus bud, it wouldn't be able to escape. After Shinjuli sealed the 8 evil beasts in the lotus bud, he would use all his divine power to purify the Zisha outside. Imo placed his hand on the barrier of the lotus bud and finally said in a hoarse voice, "Shinjuli, let me in." She said these words with her magic power, which could penetrate everything with or without substance. Shinjuli, who was meditating inside, seemed to be shocked by an electric shock. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked in her direction. When he saw her pretty face close to the lotus bud, his face changed greatly. What are you doing here? Get out. Let me in." Imo only said these words. Chapter 1751. This is not the place for you to come. Devil Master, this has nothing to do with you. Shinjuli's voice was harsh and urgent. I will purify them. You will only be a hindrance if you come in. Get out. Get out now. I will say it again. Let me in. Imo stared straight at him and refused to give in. Shinjuli suddenly looked straight at her. There was no emotion in his eyes, only hatred and indifference. Devil Master, are you always so confused? Or is it that you've rekindled your feelings for me and want to get me back? Don't you care about Lizine anymore? She and I are already married. His words were very vicious, and the hatred in his eyes was more like a thorny whip. Imo's eyes were dark and her face was slightly pale. She still said the same thing, let me in. Shinjuli secretly took a breath. Ningxuama, don't make trouble for me. To tell you the truth, after I seal this place, everything I owe you will be cleared. I will go back to the Tianxi continent and live the life I used to. There will be nothing between you and me. Nianma is your child. I have done you wrong, so I will resurrect him and return him to you. In this way we will not owe each other anything. Why do you still want to be entangled? Imo pursed her lips and turned a deaf ear to his harsh words. She only asked in a low voice, you don't want me to go in, do you? She occupied the position that the ghost should occupy. The wandering ghosts in the outer circle were naturally unwilling to give up. They circled around behind her and stretched their claws. The purple evil spirit gathered behind her was getting thicker and thicker. It was getting fiercer and fiercer. It was about to solidify. If she did not have a wizardry barrier to protect herself, she would have been devoured by these ferocious creatures at this time. The purple evil and the dead souls were extremely dangerous. Once she stayed with them for a long time, even if she had a protective wizardry barrier, it would bring irreversible damage to her. Shinjuli looked at her pale face and suddenly sneered. Ningxuama, are you so shameless? If you know what's good for you, get out of here. I don't want to see you again. This was the harshest thing he had said to her since they met. Imo had been holding onto the lotus bud barrier with both hands, but now she slowly let go of it. She smiled gently. I'll scram. Shinjuli, don't regret this. Her charming face was pale, and even her once captivating red lips had been pursed into a pale white. Shinjuli suddenly looked away and said coldly, I have never regretted it. Get the hell out of here. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a flash of light in her right palm and a dagger appeared. His heart suddenly sank. Before he could say anything, Imo had already cut open his left palm. Blood flowed out instantly. The surrounding purple demons seemed to have smelled the taste of the best delicacies and rushed to her palm one after another. Shinjuli's face changed dramatically. He knew that once the purple demons got into her body, she could only wait for death. At this moment he had no time to think too much. He raised his sleeve, and the wizardry barrier in the direction where Imo was standing suddenly cracked open. Imo pressed one hand on the gap and her body swayed. She directly entered the wizardry barrier. The lotus bud closed the moment she entered. Of course, there were some strange-looking ghosts that followed her in. They opened their mouths and attacked Imo desperately, trying to suck the blood flowing from her palm. Chapter 1752. A beam of white light shot out and hit those ghosts, causing them to be annihilated. You're crazy. Shinjuli was simply flustered and exasperated. Imo closed her eyes slightly. Yes, she was crazy. She had gone crazy the moment she met him so many years ago. He was so crazy that he couldn't control himself. The 8 chaotic evils in the enchantment seemed to have smelled a real delicacy. They let out a few ear-piercing screams and pounced on her. Sure enough, her flesh and blood was the real treasure to them. The god's flesh and blood was just a substitute. Imo pursed her lips and smiled. She did not know if she was laughing at this damned fate or at her own inexplicable feelings. She raised her hand and the sky splitter sword struck again, slashing at the first evil beast that attacked. Her sword was invincible. That day when Yi Tianli held it in his hand, she used his not-so-skillful swordsmanship to stab Shinjuli. Not to mention that she was personally attacking now? Its power was not to be underestimated. She thought that this sword could split this monster into two. Even if it did not split into two, it could at least cut a big hole in its body, right? She did not expect that when her sword stabbed into the monster's soft and slippery belly, it was like stabbing into oil. She did not feel anything at all. When she retracted her sword, there was not even a white mark left on the monster's body. This angered the monster. Its fangs grew 10 feet in the wind and it stabbed at Imo. 3 of the other 7 monsters also gave up on Shinjuli. They also flashed their fangs and rushed towards her. Fast. Imo had never seen such a fast monster. Suddenly, something flashed in her mind. She curled her lips and smiled, but her eyes flashed with a hint of fierceness. The sky splitter sword in her hand suddenly struck out. A rain of blood suddenly flew around her body. The rain of blood turned into small crimson swords and shot towards the 4 monsters. There was an earth-shattering roar in the enchantment. The 4 monsters were turned into hedgehogs in the blink of an eye by these small crimson swords. They howled and fell. Before they fell to the ground, they turned into ashes and scattered. Shuama, stop. Shinjuli's voice sounded like it was going to split apart. His body swayed and he finally managed to get around the monsters that were still surrounding him. He ran towards her. His running speed could not be said to be slow, but right now he had lost too much of his internal energy, so he was a bit slower than Imo. They watched as her figure flashed and dashed towards the other 4 evil beasts. Fresh blood burst out from her body once again as another round of blood swords shot out, nailing the remaining 4 evil beasts to the ground before turning them into ashes. In the blink of an eye, the 8 ferocious beasts disappeared without a trace. The lotus bud enchantment finally quieted down. Imo's entire body was bathed in blood, and his face was pale. He stood there swaying, but there was a smile on his lips. Shinjuli, if you want to completely destroy these evil beasts, you don't just have to offer the flesh and blood of the gods. There's also the blood of the demons' hearts. Shuama. Shinjuli did not care that she was covered in blood and directly hugged her. His voice was anxious and angry. Who told you to do this? His fingers trembled as he felt her pulse. She raised her hand and struggled to avoid him. She slightly closed her eyes. I think, this way we don't owe each other anything. She even struggled as if she wanted to escape from his grasp. Shinjuli hugged her so tightly that it was as if she would disappear if he let go. Shuama, let me see your injuries. His voice was very hoarse. Chapter 1753. His voice was extremely hoarse, and his fingers that were touching her wrist were extremely cold. The two moves she used just now were the unique skills of the Devil Clan, but they were also moves that could kill 1,000 enemies and hurt 800 of her own. The blood sword that burst out was condensed from her heart's blood and magic power, and its lethality was not ordinary. It was a move that could be used to perish together with the enemy when there was no other choice. This kind of move could only be learned by the Devil Clan, who had extremely high magic power. It was a bit similar to the demonic disintegration technique. Once used, it could certainly destroy the enemy, but it would also be used up along with the loss of heart's blood. Many years ago, there was once a Devil King who was chased into a corner by his pursuers and was forced to use this move. He killed hundreds of immortal cultivators, and his soul was annihilated. Shinjuli never thought that Imo would use this move on the 8 evil beasts as soon as they came in. He wanted to stop it, but it was too late. At this moment she was lying in his arms, gasping for breath. There was a trace of a stubborn smile on her lips, but her eyes were about to close. Shinjuli, this way we don't owe each other anything, she murmured. I want to save my face. If you don't want to be with me, just throw me out. Shinjuli's face was snow white and his heart seemed to be torn apart in an instant. He hugged her, who was almost floating, and said, Shuima, I'm sorry. He didn't mean to hurt her, but he wanted to let her go, but he didn't want her to die here. The 8 chaotic beasts were the root of the purple evil. Usually they could only be sealed, but they couldn't be completely killed. There were only 2 ways to kill them. The first was to use the flesh and blood of God. God would use a special curse technique to cover his flesh and blood, turning it into blood lotus petals that would scatter in all directions. These evil beasts would eat these petals, and when they ate a certain amount of flesh and blood with the curse, the 8 evil beasts would explode and die. Of course, God would also cease to exist. At the last moment, God would use his last breath to turn into a heavy rain, completely purifying the remaining purple evil chi between heaven and earth. In the future, there would be no more purple evil chi and the world would be peaceful again. As for the second method, it was a little more complicated. It required the gods and demons to work together. The gods would sacrifice their own flesh and blood and wait for the 8 evil beasts to devour half of the gods' blood before using the demon heart sword technique to kill these evil beasts. And what Imo used just now was the heart sword technique. To use this technique, the first thing one had to do was to sever one's own heart meridian. Then one had to use a special technique to expel the blood from the heart meridian out of the body and turn it into a blood sword. No demon king who used this move could survive. Right now, Imo's pretty face was deathly pale. Lying in his arms, she already looked like a lamp that had run out of oil. Shinjuli's face was pale. He hugged her tightly and called her name by her ear. This name had long been engraved in his bones. Shuima, Shuima, Shuima. At the same time, he pressed his palm on her back and channeled his psychokinesis into her body to connect her severed heart meridian. Imo struggled in his arms again and wanted to break free. I don't want to get you back. I just don't want to owe you anything. I want to use my own method to be even. Go back to the Tianxi continent and live your own life. Go find Xin. I don't want to take revenge. I don't want to take revenge. I just want you to not let her appear in front of me again. Tears seeped out from the corner of her eyes, gradually wetting her curly eyelashes. However, her little mouth stubbornly pursed. Chapter 1754. Although she was lying in his arms, her body was trying to stay away from him. She even tried to break away from his hand that was connecting her pulse. You don't want me anymore. Shinjuli, if you don't want me anymore, just stay away from me. Her tears and her words were like a knife, twisting and turning in Shinjuli's heart. He hugged her and hugged her to his chest. Shuima, I'm sorry. I didn't mean what I said just now. How could I not want you? I've never given up on you. Just. Without Luzine, I would have dealt with her a long time ago. After I found out the truth, I dealt with her. Shuima, I only like you, I only love you. There has never been anyone else. Listen to me and let me heal you, liar. Liar. You said that you were married to her, and you even blocked the lightning for her. Imo was half awake and half confused. Her little hand was holding his sleeve stiffly. Her fingertips were clearly touching his collar, but she refused to grab it. She felt wronged. You sent me flying because of her and my stomach hurt. My stomach hurt so much at that time, but you didn't care about me. I was a jerk at that time. Shuima, I'm sorry. Shinjuli felt as if there was a lump in his throat and he couldn't speak. Naturally, he knew that his slap that day had caused her indescribable harm, whether it was physical or mental. He explained to her as he transferred his telekinesis into her heart. Lizine and I weren't married. I blocked the lightning for her because I owed her father a favor, so I had to help her pass the lightning tribulation. He tried to summarize the matter with Lizine as he rubbed his face against her tear-stained face. Shuema, the person I've always liked is you, and I've never thought of marrying anyone else. Come, be good and let me connect your pulse. She seemed to have accepted his explanation. Her stiff body showed signs of softening, and she was no longer so against him healing her. He took the opportunity to channel his psychokinesis deeper. Shuema, be good. Follow my psychokinesis. I will cure you. She was already half asleep, as if she had sunk into those old nightmares. So many people wanted to kill me. No one cared when I had a high fever in the inn. No one cared when I cried. No one cared when I fainted in the bathtub to reduce my fever. No one cared when I almost drowned. The children were hungry and so was I. But I couldn't find anything to eat. Her tears flowed out again. Shenjuli's lips trembled as he lowered his head to kiss her gently. He hugged her even tighter. Shuema, it's all my fault. At this moment she was no longer the cold and distant devil master. Instead she was like a child who had been wronged. She unknowingly spilled out all the grievances of the past. Shenjuli connected her heart with one hand and held her in his arms with the other. From time to time he would wipe away her tears with his lips. Her tears were salty and a little bitter. The temperature seemed to be able to directly burn his heart. Hearing his repeated apologies, she finally stopped resisting him. Her small hands unknowingly clung to his clothes tightly, as if she had finally found the support of her soul. She leaned her head against his chest and murmured, "Great God, I'm cold. Hug me. You haven't hugged me for a long time." Shinjuli could only hug her even tighter. Tears fell from the corners of his eyes, and his heart rose and fell like a tide. How long had it been since she called him Great God? How long had it been since she leaned on him like this? Chapter 1755. She was obviously in a daze. Almighty God, please don't abandon me again. I am afraid that you will abandon me. I am pregnant with your child. No, I can't use the child to threaten you. You want me because you like me, not because of the child. Shuema. Shinjuli's lips touched the corner of her lips. How long had it been since he hugged her so intimately? His lips touched her lips that were a little dry because of excessive blood loss. His heart ached as if he was drowning. He never liked to explain himself. Shuema, I have always wanted you because I like you. Shuema, I am afraid that you will abandon me. Shuema, hang in there. Think about me and our Nyenma. He is still waiting for you to go back. As he spoke, he forcefully infused her with his psychokinesis to keep her alive. He could not let her die. If she died, then what was the point of all the sacrifices that he had made? What was the point of him saving the world? It was only because she was in this world that he wanted the world to be safe and sound. She also wanted to be safe and sound. His psychokinesis surged into her body and forcibly connected her heart. However, without her cooperation, the heart meridian would not heal on its own under the support of his psychokinesis. She did not know if it was because of his last sentence or because the blood in her heart was flowing again. Her brain finally woke up from the half-drowsy state. She struggled to open her eyes to look at him. Her pair of eyes were misty and dark as if they had been washed by water. From the initial confusion, they gradually became clear. It was as if she had finally struggled out of the nightmare of the past. Looking at his pale face, she said, "You." She wanted to push him away, but she could not bear to. She had been longing for this embrace for too long. Now she was finally here and he was hugging her so tightly. It was like many years ago before the two of them had broken up. Although he did not confess his feelings, he often liked to hug her. She also liked to nestle in his arms. In his arms, she felt like a drifting boat that had finally found a harbor. It was a warm and peaceful feeling. He was the only one who could give her this feeling. No one else could. She wanted to push him away, but she couldn't help but lean against him and stare at him. "What you said just now, was it true? You didn't lie to me when I was about to die?" She lowered her eyes again. "You've always liked to lie to me. You even erased my memories." Shinjuli, it seemed that not only had all her memories of Ning Shuemo returned, but even the memories that had been erased had also returned. No wonder she didn't believe him. Although she was still skeptical of him, she was like a little kitten curled up in his embrace. Her little mouth was still proudly pursed, but her little hand was unknowingly grabbing onto his lapel. He was like a child who was afraid of being abandoned. He stubbornly expressed that he was not afraid of being abandoned because he was already used to being abandoned. However, he still yearned to be taken in and didn't want to be abandoned. She probably didn't realize how contradictory her actions and expression were. Her expression made his heart ache, but he couldn't help but laugh. Just as the corner of his lips rose, it was filled with sorrow. This was his treasure. He had always wanted to hold the treasure in his hands. He didn't know when he had accidentally lost it. Now he finally found it again. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.